Good evening and welcome to Speaker's Corner UK channel with my amazing co-host from Gin and Tonic, the Gin and Tonic Show. Stop spamming. Good evening, sir. How are you?
You caught me off guard there. No, I'm fine.
Excellent.
It's getting cold. It's getting like towards winter, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a great fan either. Good evening, Thinking Clearly too. Yes, so what we'll do tonight is we will cover as much as we can, hopefully the whole of it, but as much as we can of part two, or the second section, if you like, of the Answering Atheists stream from Hamza's Den Friday night. There was, some of you may know, I was on the stream from EF Dawa where they were doing a review of their stream. And so I went on there. So we might hopefully get a chance to review their review of their stream, which I was saying to Stops, a bit like Inception. A review of their stream.
Yeah, but that was incredibly painful.
Yeah, there was definitely some painful parts in there. Good evening, Oneness and PO. Good evening to everybody that's there. So we'll get started straight away. So Tom Jump comes in now. So that they've done their long intro that we critiqued. Go and have a look at part one for that. And now Tom jumps in. I haven't got the whole of Tom here. We're going to do a fair amount of Tom, but once they go off into the long grass, as I would call it, with evolution, I'm going to skip that part. My expertise, well, not that I have like super expertise in particular anyway, but I'm not particularly knowledgeable on evolution, certainly not any of the finer detail. So that part I'm gonna skip. So we'll do most of Tom, but there will be a cut there. Again, if you want to go and watch this, it's on Hamza's Den. So, if you want to watch the full one, by all means, go do so. I don't have a problem with that, and I'm fine recommending people because that's where the original video was. So again, for copyright and for YouTube, this is a critique of part two of that. So we're certainly going to be making a lot of comments, and this was probably going to take us a couple of hours, I guess. So we'll see how we get on.
One other thing, if somebody really needs some like material to go and critique and hone your skills or something, Hamza's Dem is now a repository of bullshit regarding atheists, because he thinks he now has something going with, because they've realized that atheists are actually a much bigger threat to Islam than Christians, and now he is going after them, but he doesn't understand anything. So if you want to go crazy, there's like I don't know, 15 videos by now all about atheists, which I didn't even know. I never heard about it. But so if you
and again, for those who are interested, here's part one. So this is part one of our critique. So if you go and pop that in, or you pick it up off the link there, or you just go back on my channel to the previous video if you like. If you subscribe to the channel and then you go back to the video, you'll see we did that. I think it was Saturday, wasn't it? Something like that. Saturday, I guess it would have been. So there we go. Yeah, so there's a lot on Hamza's Den channel. Obviously, yeah, as Stop says, they seem to recognize that atheism is a significant challenge to Islam, although they try to downplay that. But he's got very simple. I mean, there are more robust critiques. I don't think they're persuasive, but there are definitely more robust critiques of atheism. Hamza's not really in the ballpark for a robust critique. It's very surface level. It's very like a simple critique, and it's not particularly difficult to deal with. And the other thing is, many of the more nuanced things he doesn't know about, like Euthyphro's dilemma. Apparently he's been doing this 19 years and he didn't know what Euthyphro's dilemma is. I found that quite baffling, but,
yes,
that's. But again, if your head's in the Quran and you're mostly dealing with Christians, they're not going to bring that up, right? So now he's trying to turn his attention to atheism, and obviously we'll see how well that works. So let's get straight on into it. So I'm going to now bring in, share the screen here. Why is my share? What do I do here? We just go here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to bring that up. I'm on my. This is dedication. I'm on my laptop in my car because we have a guest, and my wife's going to be falling asleep soon. So, when I'm going to be sitting in my car with my laptop here, and Stop spamming where he is. So this is dedication. We had a couple of hours. So let's go through this now and give our thoughts on this. So Tom has just joined, and this is exactly where part one left off. And here we go. And Stops here. Just shout out whenever you need me to pause.
Oh, yes, we spoke to Tom before. How are you doing, Tom?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Oh, and just before, do you guys mind if I copy just this segment onto my channel so I can show my viewers?
Sorry, what did you want to do?
Can I copy this segment that I'm talking with you guys to my channel just to show my
Oh,
viewers?
you mean, yeah, that's not a problem.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, my
Sure
question.
you're gonna want to do that though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love hearing you guys. We'll listen to the whole podcast. So yeah, there's a few things I would disagree with. One is that the idea that new atheism is founded on the belief that Darwinism disproves a God. Well, that's not really the claim. The claim is that it disproves the Adam and Eve, that God created just one man and one woman. That's the idea.
Let's just pause it there and let's make sure that we hone in on that and remember that, because Hamza will later on either forget that or just, ignore this. So Tom's specific claim here is that Darwinism or evolution, let's just say common descent, we don't even need to talk about the mechanism, but common descent refutes certain God claims, which is exactly what I said to EF Dawa last night, painfully so on the EF Dawa channel. And so did you, Stops, and we'll get to you later on, where you both mentioned that it doesn't refute all gods or whatever, say like a deist god, but the Adam and Eve story, if you think they came into existence by a God's hand, then common descent is in conflict with that idea. So let's remember that now as we go through here, because he said it there, but it will sort of get lost and it'll sort of go all over the show. So I just want to highlight it at this early stage.
But Rob, you need to quickly give a little bit of background, because the thing is that what happened originally is that Hamza said, okay, I need atheists on there, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions, because atheists are constantly telling me that evolution disproves their God, that suffering disproves the God, and what was the third one? Belief.
All about his belief thing, yeah. Actually, that was a mistake last night, but I'll talk about that later at some point.
Yeah, okay, but those were the 3 questions. Okay, this is what atheists always say. Like he doesn't know what is going on. All right, so he just put that out there, and he's now waiting for reactions. And this is what is happening. So these are the reactions now by people like Tom, who go on there and answer these 3 questions. So this is what it's all about.
Yeah. All right. So so they've given their earlier one, which we've done in part 1. He's now coming on to respond to those, common atheist tropes according to the Muslim guys. So let's go through that part of it.
What evolution disproves, and so it disproves like a literalist interpretation, and that's what Dawkins is arguing against. Not that it disproves any kind of a God. There's obviously many kinds of a God that it doesn't disprove. Like if God started evolution and guided that as a process, it doesn't disprove that kind of a God, but it does disprove the kind that created Adam and Eve. Secondly, I mean, your arguments about morality, I don't think that's not quite how most.
Just before that, we should deal with one topic at a time.
Okay.
So firstly, thank you, Tom, for joining us. Give me a second here. So this is exactly what it says. One of the greatest challenges to the human intellect has been to explain how the complex, improbable appearance of design in the universe arises. The natural temptation is to attribute the appearance of design to actual design itself. The temptation is a false one because the designer hypothesis immediately raises the larger problem of who designed the designer. The most ingenious and powerful explanation is Darwinian evolution by natural selection. We don't have an equivalent explanation for physics. We should not give up hope for a better explanation arising in physics, something as powerful as Darwinism for biology. So this is page 157 to 158, and the conclusion, of course, that he makes is God most likely does not exist. So I'm going to stick to my original point, which is...
Yeah, so he's quoting what Dawkins said in a video or in some comment somewhere. Yeah.
That new atheism is based on a fallacy, and that it's not just the idea that Darwinism challenges the idea of Adam and Eve. They do push the narrative that Darwinism challenges the existence of God, evolution undermines God. And in fact, this is not just me, this is academics who've actually spoken about this. And if you want, right now, I could actually play a clip where Dawkins actually says that himself.
Okay.
Well, I understand.
Can you just pause here? This is such. I don't know. Sabur really doesn't catch it. What he's doing, he's got it in for Professor Dawkins, and wherever he can, he looks for sound bites that other people say where they are criticizing whatever it is in the God Delusion. Now, the God Delusion was a very humorous book. It was like an introduction to things. It was not intended as a philosophical or whatever a textbook or anything. It's just entertainment, all right? So nobody, I don't think he ever thought that this was going to be taken apart. Now, what Subur doesn't understand is that what Professor Dawkins is doing, he is looking at it from the point of view of a British person. So whatever he says, if he talks about God, he talks about the Christian God. He does not specify that this is, I don't know, Vishnu or Krishna or whoever. He is talking only about Yahweh. And this is what he should understand. And this, I don't understand how he cannot understand it. And if he says they and academics and who the fuck cares? This is about Tom. This is about Rob. This is about me. We do not say that. So he can't go and say, well, other people are saying that, therefore you also need to do it. We are not Muslims. He is so used to having this from Muslims, where everybody must be united, must say the same thing, that he doesn't understand that atheists are individuals. It doesn't work that way. I don't understand why he cannot get this into his thick skull.
Okay.
He said that, but what is the fallacy there? Because he's not arguing that evolution disproves God in that quote.
He's saying that the most ingenious and powerful explanation is Darwinian evolution by natural selection. We don't have an equivalent explanation for physics. We should not give up a hope. So basically, he applies the same thing for physics there. What he's saying here is that God is being replaced by Darwinism as an explanation. The designer hypothesis is being challenged by Darwinism. That's exactly what he's saying.
No, he doesn't. No, that's not what he says. He says the apparent designer, because I've had this so many times. He has explained this multiple times, and people like Subur really don't have the brain to grasp this. He is saying it is very easy. And this is why he says you can make a compelling case for a deist, because it is very easy to go and infer from the, from the apparent or appearance of I don't know, the fingers or the thumb and things like that, that this has been designed to, that it makes sense in order to do something. It appears to be like that. But it's not when you start looking at it. And he's explained this so many times, and Subur doesn't catch it. He simply can't.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's a case of it disproves a God where somebody is taking a literal interpretation from the Bible or the Quran. If you are not a literalist, if you're somebody like Kenneth Miller, Francis Collins, okay, your challenge is how you reconcile that with the Bible, and there you've got to do a little bit of sort of interpretation and so forth. And in fact, I've spoken to one Muslim out of the hundreds I've spoken to, a guy called Shia Isa, the Black Telect is his sort of moniker online. He's the only guy that's ever argued directly that the Quran, the drop of blood, well, hey, that's actually common descent. He's tried to argue that. I think that's a bad argument. He's the only guy that's ever done that. Everybody else, and on the stream last night as well, Abbas was saying, no, God literally created Adam and Eve kind of ex nihilo, out of nothing else, or not from something previous, if you like. They didn't have a common ancestor. And that's the sort of God, I agree. But as you pointed out, Sabur's hobby horse is Dawkins, because he thinks that we take Dawkins as seriously as they take Muhammad. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. But trying to explain this to him, and maybe lay people will read Dawkins' book and take everything in there, but the rest of us will have a look at it and will agree with things where we think there's a strong point, and we'll disagree with things that we don't, right? But it wasn't, as you quite rightly pointed out, for high-end academics or for those of us that are looking into the topics more deeply. It was for the general public, and that was the idea there.
Right, for evolution. And he's saying that happens in many cases where you have a God of the gaps, where God explains lightning.
Exactly, exactly. But what you just said in the beginning was the exact opposite. You said, no, he's not denying the existence of God using Darwinism. He's simply using Darwinism to challenge Adam and Eve. And I'm saying,
Okay, but Adam and Eve is a particular claim by certain theists, and certainly the literal version of that, because like we said, there's some theists that don't take a literal interpretation. Somebody like Bob the Builder, I think, and others probably take, and he said it himself. I've heard him literally say it, and he was pillared for it by other Christians. He said the Genesis story is to be taken allegorically. So presumably he's got some other view on that. He may not have a literalist view on that, and there's other Christians that don't. It's not an argument against them specifically, but it is an argument against those people that take the book literally and think Adam and Eve came into existence. That it needs so much explanation here is baffling to me.
The thing is that we had an imam from London on the Gin and Tonic who propagates evolution and human evolution. And he says the Adam and Eve story is allegorical, and the best that you can do is put them as an example of a separate creation. But they are not part of the human generic or gene pool, or whatever you want to call it. And he is saying, no, absolutely, human evolution is observable and is demonstrable, and he accepts it 100%. I mean, yes, they threw shoes at him when he made this announcement for the first time. He was, I think, thrown out of a lot of things, but now it's quietened down, and now there's a lot of Muslims who accept it.
Oh, really? I didn't know there were a lot. I mean, I thought there was just like very few of them. So it's interesting that you say there's a lot now. Because I've only ever heard...
Rob, they have to. What can they do? I mean,
Well, they can still deny evolution and go with a literal interpretation. Because to me and you, I think we'd agree that's the most straightforward and most, I think, honest interpretation of what the book says.
Did you watch this the stream with Armin Nawawi where he was presenting a study from the Islamic Republic of Iran?
No, I haven't.
Okay, this is interesting. Remember, I've been saying this for a couple of months now. This is now a study which is based on research where they asked, I think, 50,000 people, I don't know, in Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they found out that only a quarter actually pray, like, the 5 times a day. And only half of them think that the government should have anything to do with Islam in the Islamic Republic, okay? So there's a lot of things which are very surprising if you see the trends that, can be observed in Islamic countries where Islam is collapsing so fast. It's amazing.
Okay.
Saying, no, he is using Darwinism to challenge the design hypothesis.
Right. So when he says there's not an equivalent hypothesis for physics, what he's saying is Darwinism only applies to evolution, and there's some other theory you would need for physics that we haven't discovered yet. That's not Darwinism. That would be a different theory. So he's only saying Darwinism disproves the Adam and Eve kind of a God.
No, there's no Adam and Eve in that passage.
That's explaining the diversity of life. What caused the diversity of life? God created all the different things. That's one of the hypotheses, and the other one is evolution. So when we're saying, well, what explains the diversity of life, we're saying if it's evolution, then it's definitely not the Adam and Eve kind of a God. It's
got nothing to do with Adam and Eve. Here he's talking about Darwinism replaces the design hypothesis.
For evolution specifically, that's the only case it does replace it. It doesn't have anything to do with
And then what he does is he says, well, in physics we could find something else better.
Right, something else as in a
I'm sorry, this guy is so fucking stupid, really. I mean, how can anybody be this dumb? Can't he understand that this is an analogy where Professor Dawkins very clearly says what we have for evolution, we have the demonstrable procedures, the processes, we have the methodology, we have everything. Of course, there's still a lot of things that are open because we've only started looking at this stuff, okay? But the stuff that we have for biology is so compelling, is so convincing, that it would be great if we had the same level of confidence in what we are finding in physics, and we don't have that yet. That is all that he is saying. So you can go and look at God, you can go and look at Adam and Eve, and you can say, no, this is not possible because we have an alternative explanation and an alternative model, which is more compelling. But we don't have that yet for science. For example, for cosmogony, the beginning of the universe, So this level of confidence does not exist yet. So, and this is why he's saying it would be nice to have the equivalent level of confidence when it comes to the origin of the universe. That is what it is. It's so obvious. Why can't this idiot understand this? Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
not
not going to
supposed to
comment.
idiot.
I'm not going to comment here again. I think I've said as much as we need to say on this. It's going to go backwards and forwards, I think, for a little while. But feel free, just shout if you need to say something else, unless something else comes up. I think we've explained this and dealt with this now that because he's gone off onto Richard Dawkins. So this is kind of a red herring approach. Not every atheist takes everything Dawkins says as gospel or serious anyway. So it's a bit of a red herring as far as I'm concerned.
I'll be clear and direct here. Yeah, there's a reason why many big academics, they criticize the new atheist movement, because they use these simplistic, childish arguments. And what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to discredit that movement by saying their foundational claims are based on falsehood, right? And one of the foundational claims is that Darwinism challenges the design hypothesis. And you came on board and you said, actually, all Dawkins is saying is it challenges Adam and Eve, a story, right?
Yeah, the design as in his wife.
We've got our regular hater here. I suppose you've got to try and love haters. It's just that the brain has been, short-circuited with Islam. So what can you do, right?
The Islam virus at work.
But that's not all that Dawkins is saying. Dawkins is clearly saying here, and he also says in The Blind Watchmaker and other places in his lectures. And if you want, I can actually play the video as well, right? Just to show that actually Dawkins is someone that's quite malicious. He's not somebody who any atheist should actually defend. And I truly believe discrediting him is very important to actually show people most atheists do not actually understand what atheism is, even what Dawkins actually says. And most of the time, they are simply acting in a socialized sort of capacity. So they're not even thinking about the deeper questions. What is Darwinism about? What is it not about? And they simply follow a sort of a sheepish pattern. So just give me
the irony of saying that atheists follow a sheepish pattern, when these Muslims are taught what to think and not how to think, and follow a 1400-year-old, if we're even going to go with that hypothesis, which is certainly debatable, and they all follow that book, which is a profoundly poor book. Many of them like sheep. So the idea that that atheists are like sheep, obviously he's obviously not come across many, or he's using a generalization fallacy here. And it's true that some atheists don't think about it particularly well, but there's a massive majority of Muslims who have never read the Quran or think about Islam particularly well. And I could use that. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to engage with whichever Muslim, and it's not my intention to generalize the clueless Muslims as if that's all Muslims. But I think it's rather rich that he says that atheists are sheepish, when atheists are some of the smartest people in the world. I'm not saying they're all smart people are atheists, definitely not, but there's some incredibly smart people that have thought very deeply on these topics, and he thinks that he can discredit Richard Dawkins, and then somehow that'll have an impact on the majority of atheists. I think he's dreaming, but hey, he's entitled to it, I guess.
Give me a second here. I'm just going to bring up the video.
Can I add that, yeah?
Can you add that, please?
But what good is this?
Okay, so we've talked about this before, but we're going to do it again because you brought it up here. Okay, so he's going to make a specific claim. I'm going to bring up, because I actually typed out the words word for word for this, and we're going to go through it again one more time here, and we're going to answer the criticism that he thinks he's making here.
Tell me what you think of this, right?
You don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. Now, if your aim is to propagandize in favor of evolution, that obviously is the best seduction technique. But if your aim is to kill religion, as mine is, then just let me finish. If your aim is to kill religion, then since evolution is manifestly true, then if there are people out there who really believe that that if you are an evolutionist, you've got to be an atheist, then all I've got to do is to persuade them of evolution, which should be comparatively easy, since the evidence is overwhelming, and I'll turn them all into atheists. If anyone, they can.
So here in this clip, you can see that he's not sincere. He's working off the ignorance of people.
All right, let's deal with it here now. I'm going to bring the quote up. Let's just discuss this and put this to bed. They'll go on backwards and forwards on this now, and we'll just let it run after this. I think now's a good time to do that. So let me just bring that up quickly here and see if I can share screen on that particular. Here it is. Hopefully this comes up. Okay, so here's what Dawkins said. So let's just go through it. You don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. ... If your aim is to kill religion, then since evolution is manifestly true, then if there are people out there who really believe that that if you are an evolutionist, you've got to be an atheist, then all I've got to do is persuade them of evolution, which should be comparatively easy since the evidence is overwhelming, and I'll turn them all into atheists. So before I do something, do you want to comment on that?
No, this is very obvious. I mean, it's obvious that he doesn't understand it because it starts with an if.
Yeah, it's not only does it start with an if, but let's break down what he's actually saying here. He's saying that there are people, fundamentalists for want of a better word, who believe that the creation story, right? Adam and Eve was brought into existence either presumably 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. I don't think maybe there's old earth creationists. I guess there are. I don't know if they believe that Adam and Eve were brought into being like millions of years ago, because that would be, maybe they do, I don't know. But it's certainly focused on people that believe that Adam and Eve were brought into existence by God and not through common descent. And if those people believe that, Sabur's claim is that, hey, what Dawkins should be saying to these people is, hey, you can still be a Christian or a Muslim and you can believe in evolution. And his claim is, well, Dawkins is not doing that. He's convincing them that evolution is true and then turning them into atheists without telling them that they could still be a theist. Now, I don't believe that this is true in the following sense, that if somebody is a creationist and they've heard of that, or even if they haven't heard of it, it is unlikely, virtually unlikely, that they are suddenly going to take up the mantle of, say, somebody like Francis Collins or Kenneth Miller that are, Christians, for example, or if there's a Muslim out there, like you say, that Sheikh, it's very unlikely that people are going to accept that. And it's also not Dawkins' job to do that. If they believe that there's creation and he demonstrates to them that evolution is true, then it's up to them. They could go and research and go, hey, I found out that, but I still think that's a difficult thing. And I'm not sure that you can be, you can claim to be a theist and accept evolution. You've got to do a lot of hard work to make that compatible with the Bible or the Quran. And most believers won't do that. And if they get convinced of evolution, then they will stop believing. And I do not see a problem with that. It's not Dawkins' job to go and tell them, hey, you guys, you can actually give up the creation story and you can accept evolution and you can still be a theist. That's not his job. If they want to investigate that, that's fine. But his claim is that no, he's somehow being dishonest by doing this. And I don't agree. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say on that.
No, the thing is, it's very easy to understand if you really put your brain, if you switch it on. Because all he's saying is if X is true and then Y follows, then all I have to do is show X, because if Y follows, it's automatic. That's all he's saying. And Sabur doesn't understand that because he's so hooked on the Y, because he sees a word there that he doesn't like, and therefore he automatically jumps on the Y and says, oh, look here what he's doing, he's disingenuous because he's saying this and this. No, he's not. He's building a model. He's saying that if you do this, then all I would have to do is this. He's speaking, he's building a conditional model showing how stupid this is. And you are falling for it, and you're thinking, oh, well, he said this, then this is exactly what I'm going to do. That's stupid. That's all it is.
And not only that, something else came to me at the moment as well. If we're going to play by this rules that hey, you've got to tell your opponent everything that could be the case, then why aren't the Muslim Dawah team telling everybody that before you take your Shahada, please read the Quran? And actually what you should do is read it in Arabic, because if you read it in English, you may be missing something. And also before you read the Quran, let me tell you some of the things that might be uncomfortable for you, and I'd like you to go away. Slavery, misogyny, wife beating, for example, among many other things are in there. And hey, these things are in there. There's a lot of talk about this. Please go away and do your research, learn Arabic, and then come back. And if you'd like to do your Shahada, we can do so. And we'll test you to make sure that you understand it. When you guys do that, then you might be consistent in challenging somebody else. At the meantime, you're throwing stones in a glass house. You're all very well taking Shahadas without going through all the work or telling them all the things that they need to watch out for. And then many of the converts, deconvert anyway. So if you're going to play the game of, hey, you think Dawkins is being disingenuous, then I'm going to put it to you that if you guys are not making, telling all your, non-critically thinking converts they're all about Islam and that they should be reading the Quran and learning Arabic first, then you're being disingenuous too.
No sound?
Sorry?
There's
Can
no
you hear it?
sound.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. My apologies. That's my fault. I forgot to press the button there. So let's just go back there. We need the share audio.
Welcome to the Stop Spamming Club.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Thank you for that.
He's using that ignorance against them by giving evidence of evolution and trying to convert people to atheism. So for me, I mean, I'm willing to have a little bit of a dialogue about certain topics, but when it comes to new atheism, I think it's a thoroughly discredited movement. And I think people like Richard Dawkins should actually be exposed for the charlatans that they are.
Well, what he just said was that if there are people who believe that if you accept evolution, you have to be an atheist, then if you convince those people evolution is true, then they will be an atheist. But those people are the creationists who believe in Adam and Eve, because they believe...
Wait.
That's exactly correct.
That's exactly, I was just going to say. He understood it immediately.
Yep, spot on.
Before we go to these are the creationists who believe in Adam and Eve, what do you think about that tactic of using people's ignorance to convert them to atheism?
So hang on a moment.
He didn't understand the thought model. He didn't understand it.
But he's also presupposing that these people are ignorant. If you go to anybody that believes that Adam and Eve was a creation story and it disproves evolution, they're gonna have a very poor view of you as a Muslim or a Christian. If you come along and say, hey, you're ignorant of this whole topic, you better go learn it. It's presupposing, it's like the bigotry of low expectations, that the people who don't understand this somehow are ignorant. He made this statement, not us. He said they're ignorant.
Why are people looking up to this guy? Why do people say, yeah, he's the evolution guy, he's this and this? He's got no clue. Why is it that there are so many people so convinced that this guy's actually capable of using his brain when he doesn't? Okay, he's a level up from Hamza or something, but that's it. That's not a very high level, is it? But I don't understand why people always go, yeah, subur. And everything I see is just nonsense. Like he said, like people said to me yesterday, why didn't you guys come when Sabur is here? Are you avoiding him? As though we know when this guy is doing what and where.
Yeah.
Theism.
Well, it's not their ignorance, that's their belief. They believe.
There we go. Thomas just said it as well. It's not their ignorance, that's what they believe. And your claim that they're ignorant is almost... a bigoted claim of its own. How dare you tell them they're ignorant?
Abdel Hamid, let me just say, he will destroy both of you. That is why he's such a coward. He's been running from me. He told me 6 years ago he's going to come and chat to me. He still hasn't done this. He is shit scared. And we had now Hamza admitting this. That he says, no, we are not allowed to go there because they are shit scared. They do not know what to do with us because we are Islamophobes and haters, which is bullshit, of course. So He will destroy both of you. But now, Abdelhamid, are you an idiot? Are you stupid? Are you incompetent? How come you think that Subur can go there? Why can't you? If you are not incompetent, if you are not stupid, if you are not an idiot, you can come here and destroy us because you have Islam in your as arrows in your quiver, or your ammunition, or your intellectual, whatever you want to call it. You have all the best arguments from your God. It should be easy for you to destroy us intellectually, and yet you don't. Why is that?
Belief, is it true or false?
False or
False.
yeah,
So
false.
use someone's false belief to bring them to atheism. Is that
No, but it's only false by our lights. It's not false by their lights.
a good
He
thing or a
doesn't
bad
get it.
thing?
Using their false belief to correct them is a good thing. I think. I mean, I don't understand.
I think you're actually talking across each other, actually. So what Dawkins actually says right in the beginning, the first sentence is, if I remember correctly, is you don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution.
Yeah.
That's the first line that he says.
Thank you.
So just understand, I'm not.
Yeah, but that's also his belief, right? That you don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. And it depends what other people there are. I mean, obviously you can be an agnostic, that's true. But is he saying that you can, that any theist can be I don't know that you could point to people like we have, Kenneth Miller and Francis Collins, and they can say they're Christians, they can say they fully accept evolution, but how they reconcile evolution with the Bible, or if you're a Muslim and believes it, although there's, far fewer of them, that's you've got a lot of hard work to do that. But again, that's just his belief that, you don't have to. And I suppose you could, like I say, accept that, hey, agnostics can be, or deists could be, or whatever the case is. That's true. But in terms of theists, well, only theists that claim that they can get around this by not taking a literal interpretation of their book.
Not patronizing. This basically is debunking everything that you've said so far.
Not at all. It's not debunking anything at all. I mean, I think I think at the risk of repeating ourselves, I don't think that's, we're not going to labour the point. I've been through it. If you just join now, there's a little bit at the beginning, a little bit further back where I've gone through this. I don't think repeating ourselves is going to be helpful here.
He's saying you don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, every atheist agrees with that.
Absolutely. So then,
not every atheist agrees with that. That's not true. Many atheists I've spoken to, and in fact I've had debates with, they argue evolution undermines not only a theistic God but also a deistic God.
Find me one atheist that claims that evolution undermines a deistic God. Can you find me one? And let's hear what his argument is. I'll wait for the evidence. I guarantee you it will never come.
So I mean, the new atheists, they all agree with that phrasing. So the only thing Dawkins said there was, if people believe that you can't accept evolution and a God, like creationists who believe in Adam and Eve, if you can show them evolution is true, then they will stop believing in a God.
The thing is, I don't see why you keep inserting words that Dawkins never said there.
Because he's explaining to you what Dawkins means, and you're either unwilling or unable to understand it. That's why he's, quote, inserting words. And you are desperate to try and show Dawkins up, and unfortunately, it's not working, and Tom is not falling for it.
Why don't we just stick to what he said?
That's literally what he said. He said, if there are people...
Okay, so there's two other people here, like Hamza.
Okay, now you're going to appeal to the audience, are you? As if that somehow makes your point stronger? Your own biased co-believers who will believe and accept whatever you say? That's not a good strategy, at least not for the rest of us who are watching this and thinking critically, I'm afraid. I'm not going to appeal to stop spamming everybody else and say, hey guys, obviously it's very likely they're going to agree with me. And if somebody is an independent viewer, that's like appealing to the audience, like an ad populum.
And Imran, did Dawkins mention Adam and Eve?
no.
He doesn't need to mention it. That's why Tom is explaining it to you.
No. Okay. So, and did Dawkins mention Adam and Eve in that passage of the God delusion? No, he didn't. But
Can you hear Tom's...
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I would be jumping up and down by now.
Yeah, Tom is normally quite patient. He does get on his high horse as well, but look, we all do. That's not a criticism of him necessarily. I get on mine. I'm sure you do as well. But he's quite patient here.
Defend him, and all I'm trying to show is you can't defend the indefensible.
But we obviously have. The fact that you either will not or don't understand it, we've explained that now. And I think, again, people who are thinking critically can make up their own mind. Let's put it that way.
He is a flat-out liar. What he's doing is he's using people's ignorance against them. And what you should, as an atheist, do is you should say, actually, that type of behavior should be called out, and that type of behavior doesn't reflect a fruitful discourse that we actually want to have between atheists and theists.
He's not using a dishonest tactic. You just don't understand what he said.
Boom, there we go. Boom, there we go. But of course, they're not going to agree here. Tom has explained it. You and I have explained this here. The other two guys, I mean, Imran seems to be siding with him. I don't know. Hamza would probably just side with him because I'm not sure that he understands the full thing. Tom has expanded on it simply to point out what's actually going on there. But, I think let's just let it run now.
I mean, he literally said, if there are people who believe that evolution and God are contradictory, and we can show evolution is true, they'll stop believing in God. That's just some people's worldview has that tactic. That's not being dishonest.
Wait, hang on a second. So he's using people's false beliefs to bring them to atheism. Yes or no?
No, he's not. He's using people's belief and showing their belief false.
You know what?
The false belief is from his point of view, obviously. I mean, oh my dear. It's like I want to let it run, but he keeps saying the same thing. It's like he doesn't understand. The false belief is Dawkins' view that they have a false belief. They don't believe they have a false belief.
I'm very confused. Why you don't?
The irony that Tom's confused. The irony is so thick here you can cut it with a knife. Where's my knife?
Just one second, guys. I'm actually going to repeat what exactly he says.
Do you think that repeating yourself is going to make your argument any stronger? I'll leave it to the safekeeping of the audience to decide.
And he actually says, all I have to do is convince them of evolution, and I'll make them into atheists. And I'm actually going to play it.
No, you need to look at the premise, you idiot. Oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to say that. Look at the premise, you wonderful, magnificent, excellent human being.
Then all I've got to do is to persuade them of evolution, which should be comparatively easy, since the evidence is overwhelming, and I'll turn them all into atheists.
Yeah, it's a soundbite.
If that's not clear
It's a
enough,
quote mine.
I don't know what is.
Could you replay that again from the 3-minute mark?
Could you start from the beginning of this?
Yeah, but that's obviously one of Subhu's tactics, right? Once you understand, and I've taken time to, because I've heard many of these arguments before, but I've taken time to understand what are the tactics that these Muslim apologists use, so we can be clear on it. And as you say, one of them, especially that Subhu's been caught out, and you've done it, and others have, and I've done it as well, cherry picking and quote mining. That's one of his go-to tactics. Because remember, he knows that his audience is gullible and ignorant. They're not going to open a book. They're never going to check this out. Unfortunately for him, the rest of us are going to check every single word. And our view is that we disbelieve everything he says unless we already know it to be the case, or until we can confirm it ourselves. That's my default position. I'm an atheist, quote unquote, to everything that he says, especially if I don't know about it. I'm going to dismiss the claim until there's evidence for it. Like the claim that people make the claim that evolution can disprove a deist. Find me somebody who says that, and let's hear what their argument is. I mean, we should really skip past this because now we've dealt with it.
You don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. Now, if your aim is to propagandize in favor of evolution, that obviously is the best seduction technique. But if your aim is to kill religion, as mine is, then just let me finish. If your aim is to kill religion, then since evolution is manifestly true, then if there are people out there who really believe that if you are an evolutionist, you've got to be an atheist, then all I've got to do is to persuade them of evolution, which should be comparatively easy, since the evidence is overwhelming, and I'll turn them all into atheists.
Well, firstly, as well, it won't be comparatively easy, as anybody who's spoken to fundamentalist creations will attest to. And I don't know how many Dawkins, well, it should be in a world where they were thinking critically and would accept and understand science. Most of those sort of creationist people don't understand science and wouldn't accept it anyway. They've got a biased view against science because they see it as an attack on their beliefs. So it's very unlikely, actually, that they will be convinced in reality. But I understand the principle. He's saying that, hey, if they had critical thinking and they accepted science and you provided this, you should be able to. In reality, of course, we know that's not the case.
I'm not surprised that Hamza and Sabur don't get it. I'm surprised that Imran doesn't get it. So I sort of credited him with, a little bit more horsepower.
Yeah, but I think because they've heard it from him so much that they've been blinkered that way.
That could also be, yeah.
That can also be a human tactic, right? If there's somebody you look up to, somebody you think is an expert, and they make an argument, you might not critically evaluate it so much yourself, especially if they sound very certain, like this is a slam dunk. Then you can't, it's quite possible. It's a human thing, right? I'm not saying it's necessarily them. It could be us as well. If somebody says something that we have to check ourselves sometimes and go, hang on a moment, am I just believing it because he sounds certain, he sounds like he's an expert, or can I evaluate this for myself? And that's a valuable tool that I think we can all do more of.
If anyone, they can go back.
So again, did you hear that part where he said, if people believe there is a contradiction between evolution and theism? So all he's doing is honestly showing them the evidence of evolution. He's done nothing dishonest there. And then their misguided belief makes them an atheist. He's not making them an atheist.
What is their misguided belief? The misguided belief is that atheism, belief in evolution necessitates atheism. That is their misguided belief.
Oh, fuck, Imran.
So that's a false.
Please. Sorry, don't mind me. I just get angry. I can't understand this. He's explained it now. I don't know how many times. Dawkins has said it twice, and he still doesn't get it. Really, I don't know what else to do there.
Yeah, I mean, we've, like I say, we're hitting a dead horse here at the moment.
Right, but that's not Dawkins. He's done nothing dishonest there.
No, but you're misunderstanding the point. So he's saying he's saying now very clearly the first thing. You don't have to be an atheist to believe in evolution. So that's anyone who now comes on and says atheism disproves God. They can argue with Dawkins because you're no longer arguing.
Oh my word! Okay,
with us
it's
anymore.
Crazy, eh?
He's already said that.
But I explained this last night, right, on EF Dawa, and I explained this as if I was speaking to a child. I encourage you to go and watch EF Dawa channel. I was on there,
have to be an atheist to believe in evolution.
and I explained this exactly to them, as simplistically as I possibly could. That he's not talking about a generic God. They're talking about a specific God. Thomas said it. You've said it. P.O. is honest said it. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to do this, and then they go back to generic God. Why do they want to do this?
I put it in writing, and funny enough, well, they didn't know it was me. They put this, the entire quote that I wrote, my comment, they put this on the screen to show exactly what this was. I was very surprised, but they put it up there, and everybody could see it. So
well, you're coming up later, so we'll get to see that as well, which is great.
No, not yet. I'm talking about yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Okay, cool. I might not have seen it, though. I wasn't always looking at it.
And then he says the people who mistakenly do believe this.
Okay, but there's the word mistakenly. That's by Dawkins' light. It's not as if those people are hoodwinking themselves. Dawkins believes that they are mistaken, and he's going to correct their mistake by teaching them that evolution is true, and that would then lead them to atheism if they believe.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct.
If the second if is the most important part.
Correct.
Amongst the theists. The people who mistakenly do believe this amongst the theists, all I've got to do to them is run with it. I'm just going to convince them that evolution exists.
Yeah.
And because they misunderstand evolution and atheism not being required to exist together, they're going to become atheists.
Let's ask this question.
Yeah, we've done it now. No stops.
It.
I know it's
Sorry,
frustrating.
just to understand something, because I'm trying to understand Tom's position. Do you believe, Tom, if evolution is true as you believe it to be true, then this is proof against the existence of a creator?
No.
Okay, but notice how the question was framed, against a creator. And I'd have to just say to Tom, although he explained this in the beginning, I think at that point, if I had a small critique of Tom, Tom would have gone, what creator are you talking about? because
Yeah, but
otherwise
Jesus,
it's just
he was under
generic.
the impression, I've explained it 3 times, it should be sufficient. So, yeah, okay. He could have done it again. I agree.
No.
All of the new atheists agree with what Dawkins said. You don't need
I'm
to
trying to understand what
believe.
you believe, Tom. That's all. I'm just establishing your belief.
Right, I'm one of the new atheists. I would class myself then. So yes, I believe that you can believe in evolution and a God. Like there are many.
What's the difference between new atheists and old atheists? Just so I understand these terms.
Let me just actually read to you what the difference is. At least have I got it up here according to the Stanford Encyclopedia. Again, people can differ, right? So that's fine. I just want to bring it up.
I differ.
Okay, you might differ with the Stanford Encyclopedia as well. That's cool. I'll just very quickly do that.
I think
I'm
it's
not sure.
far too convoluted and far too
Well,
complicated.
there's a very short bit on actually. I think I highlighted it specifically about this with new atheism. So let me just have a very quick look. I apologize. I'm not going to bring it on screen because it's a quite a big thing on new atheism. If atheism is usually and best understood in philosophy as the metaphysical claim that God does not exist, then what one might wonder should philosophers do with the term new atheist? Philosophers write articles on and have devoted journal issues, French and Wittstein, 2013, to new atheism. But there is still nothing close to a consensus on how the term should be used. Fortunately, there is no real need for one because the term new atheist does not pick out some distinctive philosophical position or phenomenon. Instead, it's a popular label for a movement predominantly represented by 4 authors, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens, whose work is uniformly critical of religion, but beyond that appears to be unified only by the timing and popularity.
Okay, no, that I agree with. Yeah.
Yeah, so that certainly comes from the Stanford Encyclopedia at least. Now Tom might have a slightly different one, but there's not a lot about it apart from timing, etc.
Yeah, but I don't
just
think
an
Hamza
ideological-
understands this.
Yeah, well, I don't think any of them have. And all you have to
Because
do
for
is
them it's
Google new
emotional.
atheism and go to Stanford Encyclopedia, right? Or I suppose you can go somewhere else. But there might be other definitions of it. But I'm quite fine with that view anyway.
difference. It's not like a political difference.
Well,
No, what changed?
I would put it another way. I would say the old atheists were more coherent and were less hypocritical because they accepted nihilism, they accepted right and wrong are mere social constructs, evil and good.
Well, no, they didn't. If you read, I just had a cursory look, but Kant and Wittgenstein didn't accept nihilism and in fact tried to argue against it. So no, they actually didn't just accept it. Some others might have done, that's true, but certainly some of them didn't. So that's not necessarily the case.
Do not actually exist. So I would say the old atheist God like Nietzsche and all the rest, they were a lot more philosophical and a lot more coherent than the new atheists.
Well, I think
Okay, I'm
you're
just
cherry picking
I'm
that.
just trying to understand the terms.
Which is why interesting as well that the old atheists actually were philosophers, and you would find that today the new atheists are actually criticized by many philosophers. So
Well, Daniel Dennett is one of the leading philosophers in the theory of mind, one of the leading up there with Chalmers and others in the theory of mind. Harris has got I think a PhD in philosophy, but it's not his field of expertise. That's in neurobiology. It's true that Dawkins and Hitchens don't have a philosophical degree, but do they need that?
you also find that sort of difference. So it's not just a sort of sociological, chronological thing that, okay, this one started after 2006, this one was a sort of...
Well, that's the Stanford Encyclopedia differs with you. So who are we going to accept and why? Because again, I don't think it's true that
I
the
like
previous
Tom's
ones
face.
just accepted nihilism anyway. I've just given you some examples where people didn't accept nihilism and try to argue against it.
early 20th century sort of phenomena. I think there's profound misdirection that we have to... There's a profound narrative which is falsely spread all across the world by new atheists, which I think the old atheists would not actually accept. So I wouldn't accept...
All the question is what is the false thing and where's your evidence for it? That's the questions to be asking at this point, because that's the thing that Subur definitely gets away with, unfortunately, too much, and that is making
but
these
these are red
claims and
herrings
then not
as well.
backing them up. And you're right, we've gone off into the long grass because he's got a pet peeve against Dawkins, and so that's derailed the conversation. because he wants to get other atheists to agree that Dawkins is so terrible. And of course, if Dawkins was terrible, we'd agree. Unfortunately for him, he's misunderstood and we don't agree, and neither does Tom. And his continued insistence that we should, by repeating himself and not understanding it, is not going to, it's not going to work with us. Maybe his other followers and the gullible lot will just, take it all up, but the rest of us are not going to accept it. And we've given our reasons why. It's not that we're just going to go, hey, we don't like Sabur, therefore we're not going to accept it. We're going to give our reasons, which we have done.
That is just a small difference between the two types of atheism.
Because the whole point of this particular stream was to establish that, first of all, evolution doesn't...
Fortunately, this is, every now and again, we've got to give credit where it's due. Hamza is trying to bring it back now to the actual topics that the stream was talking about. And that was off into the long grass with a pet peeve of Sabur's that took, how long? A good 10 minutes or more.
10 minutes, yeah.
Undermine the existence of a creator. Tom has educated his fellow atheists to that point.
No, he hasn't educated his fellow atheists to anything. You've asked, and I said it last night, you've asked a question where the grammar of your question is incorrect.
No, hang on. In Hamza's view, he has, because Hamza's assumption is that every atheist says that the reason why they are atheists and the reason why you can be is because of evolution. Because evolution disperses all gods. And this is a false assumption. And this is why he thinks by specifying it, he has now educated all other atheists. He doesn't understand that the only person who was educated is Hamza.
But and also I specifically told him this, and I said to him last night, again, go watch it last night. I said to him last night, what do you think atheists mean when they said evolution has disproven God? Are they talking about all gods, generic God? Or is it likely they're talking about yours? And he's like, exactly. I can't remember what he said, but I don't know. And I said to him,
it's just God.
Don't assume things.
He does not understand it. Rob, he cannot. His brain is not capable of processing this thought pattern. He cannot follow the logical sequence, the reasoning, the whole sequence. He cannot go and understand it. This is the problem.
Well, I think if you already have a bias that you're looking for a particular answer, then I think, yes, you're absolutely right. You're going to ignore any of the side things and you're going to try and focus. Yeah. And I have to say that is one tactic that I've noticed with Hamza. It happened with Skydive Phil as well. Right, and I was standing there in the park the one day next to Skydive Phil, holding my camera there, and he misrepresented him 3 times to try and get him to say something that Hamza already wanted or thought was the conclusion. And Phil multiple times said, no, that's not correct. And eventually in one of my videos, I actually pipe up there and I say, because I got a bit frustrated now, and I said, you keep misrepresenting him, and words to that effect. How long are you going to keep doing this, or words to that effect? So when Hamza's got a conclusion in his mind, then anything else is just deleted out of his mind, and that's not helpful.
So thank you, Tom. So any atheists watching?
By the way, Stift in the comments in the private chat, he actually said Darwinism does disprove God. So
yeah, we're going to bring Stift on, no problem.
Atheists don't push this out, or the new atheists haven't pushed out this narrative, and he's actually saying yes. So,
he might be an old atheist, though. I don't know. Maybe I'll learn the difference between the two.
But the only thing that has to be asked is, what does Sift or anybody atheist mean when they say disproves God? What God? That's all the only question that has to be answered. And if they say all gods, well, I think that's demonstrably false, and we could easily show them that's the case. And my suspicion is, for almost all atheists, I could be wrong, but almost all atheists, when they say disproves a God, they're thinking of a particular God, and a God that, is in conflict with common descent.
He'd be pretty worried for that.
1 second, Sif. Hold back a second. Just 1 second, mate. Right.
Sadly, Sith actually never gets a chance to, I don't know who he is, but he never got a chance to come on at all.
So what I'm saying is, Tom, when you put this on your channel, all your atheists watching will finally stop telling people evolution disproves God. If you do that, Tom, you've done our job today, alhamdulillah, with regard to that point. I'm afraid no. So your second point was on morality, is that right?
Yeah, your views on morality. Most philosophers don't agree with what you're saying there. So most philosophers agree.
Okay, so this part, now we're going to get into something interesting here, and it's a topic that I'm quite interested in. And you will see this to me is okay, like I've said before, none of the parts that they came with were particularly strong, but I think this was their weakest part by far, and we're probably going to stop quite a bit going through this one. That's for sure. Their understanding of objective and so forth, and the fact that Hamza doesn't know what the euthyphro dilemma is going to be very telling, and we're going to go through quite a bit of this now in detail.
That you can have objective morality without a God.
You can have
So-
objective morality. And who decides what this objective
Whoa, whoa,
morality
whoa,
is?
one second, one second.
Objective.
Yeah,
One
objective, yes.
One second. You're saying most philosophers believe you can have objective morality without God.
I'm not sure if that's actually the case. What the full papers do show is that the majority of philosophers accept moral realism. But again, and I'm not a philosophical expert, so I'm certainly open to somebody correcting me. But I don't think that you are committed to the view that objective morality exists if you believe in moral realism. So the two, as far as I understand, it doesn't follow that if you're a moral realist, therefore you are an objectivist. You can still be, as far as I understand, a subjectivist, even if you believe in moral realism. Again, if I'm incorrect, please correct me in the chat.
But I think what is happening is that Subur is just hooked up on this word now, and this is not necessarily, I think, what is happening, because if you are a philosopher, you will probably not even use the word objective morality. So I could imagine that there are different ways of putting it. They are talking about something like this, but it could be worded in a different way, and this is why Subur doesn't know about it. He thinks they have to use the word objective morality is this, and I believe this, and only then can he even process this and say, yeah, okay, then this is the case. I think this is what's happening here.
But I also think that and I think they do get to it, but I think it's useful to bring it up right in the beginning. What does it mean to be objective? Now they will cover it, but I think it's normally good to do it right in the beginning. Otherwise, you go off on that. And when I've had these conversations with theists, I almost don't really want to talk about subjective and objective, because I don't think we're going to get agreement on that. More what I tend to do is talk about the two different systems and how they work in principle and in practice, and then we can compare and contrast them. I think that, for me, is certainly some of the conversation I've had has been more fruitful than arguing over subjective and objective.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Field survey.
sorry, Mohammed Akbar. The way that it was resolved is that Hamza asked Rob to come back. I'm not wanted. I'm not allowed to go there. I'm
just having a quick look here
Islamophobe.
on the full papers, meta-ethics, moral realism or moral anti-realism, accept or lean towards moral realism, 52%. So it is true that, at least according to the full papers, that more than 50% of philosophers accept moral realism. Now again, if that entails objectivism, then yes, I think Tom's claim is true. If it does not entail objectivism, then that claim about Tom's is not accurate. What he could have said there instead is that the majority of philosophers are moral realists, and the majority of philosophers, at least surveyed,
that's probably
are
better,
also atheists. That would probably be a bit more accurate.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, one entails the other, in which case that would be fine.
Because I think the words
Paper,
that he uses are now going to be hooked up on.
Yeah.
Largest survey of philosophers known to man right now. They all, like 57%, agree that objective morality can exist without a God, and most are atheists.
Okay, so there I think he's... Now, I might be wrong, but at the moment I'm saying he's conflating objective morality with moral realism. But again, I will apologize, I'm happy to apologize, if in fact moral realism and objectivism are synonymous. And it's 52, so he's close, but it's enough, right? It's the majority believe in moral realism.
But it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't, because again, this is an appeal to, the
Authority, yeah.
Well, kind of like an ad populum as
And
well.
that is on top, yeah.
Although it's not necessarily if they are experts in their field and they have good reasons for it. So it's not always when you appeal to an expert that it's an appeal to authority. But if you just say because the expert says so, therefore. But if you appeal to it and you can provide reasons for it, then I think that makes a difference.
Yeah.
72% of philosophers are atheists, I think.
Okay. So that particular claim, is it basically saying objective morality as something that transcends human beings, which is true independent of human beings, is something which they believe in despite believing in God?
He phrased that incorrectly. So now you see, it confused Tom a bit, because it's not despite. They don't believe in God, so there is no despite there. That was a poor phrasing of the term by, in spite of not believing in God. In other words, as long as they don't believe in God, do they believe that? So he phrased the question or the statement poorly, and that's why you can see Tom kind of thinking up here.
And it's
believe it or
not,
no-
and it's not independent of the human mind either.
Yeah, I would just say mind independent. I think that's the way that I've heard it being phrased, and I think that's certainly acceptable for me. Other people might disagree, but that's the problem, right? With objective, with the word objective, people will disagree on what it means to be objective. I'm happy to accept that it's mind independent. There could be arguments that show that that's not a good argument. I haven't seen those. People could say no, what it really means is X or Y. But whatever it means, people need to have an agreement, and I think that's where it sometimes becomes difficult, is actually getting a consensus on what objective means. And if you can't get there, then you can't go any further, which makes it you get caught in the long grass, so to speak.
No God.
Sorry?
They don't believe in God, so they believe in objective morality.
That's why I said, despite believing in God.
Yeah, but that's poorly phrased.
Yeah, so they don't believe in God, but they do believe there is transcendent objective morality.
Okay. So what is the grounding for objective morality without the existence of God?
There's many different theories for that. My personal view is that it's in a higher order emergent property like fitness. So, certain animals can have more fitness. They'll survive in more environments than others. That's an objective property.
That's not an objective property.
Well, if it's mind independent, then it is. See, that's why you've got to be very clear in the beginning what you mean by objective.
Objective, exactly.
What do you mean? We don't give an opinion on it.
Wait, 1 second. You're saying an emergent property. An emergent property, right?
Yep.
Now, an emergent property is dependent upon environmental conditions. It can or cannot come about.
Okay, well, that depends on the environment. If you believe that the environment, and again, the vast majority of people, and I'll give you the numbers if you like, just to be sure, believe that in some form of determinism, then there's no if about it. This is the way the universe could have. There isn't another way. This particular universe, if you rewound it with exactly the same conditions, it would come about exactly the same way. So to say that it could have been different, all you're really saying there, and this is something that Harris talked about as well, what you're really saying is that it could be different in a different universe. That's all you're saying. So, and I'll just give you the numbers here as well, just so we're clear on this. Compatibilism and no free will, because those two fall together, they both accept that determinism is true. In other words, everything is predetermined. Every cause and effect was itself caused by a prior cause, and that goes all the way back. That's 51% plus 15%, so we're about 66% of, is that right? 66%, yeah. And then there's others and then the people who believe in a libertarian free will are about 18%. So I'm going there because we're talking there at that moment in time about if you believe the world's determined, then it couldn't have been another way. So this objection that, hey, if you rewind the clock, it could have come out a different way. Well, only in a different universe. But that same objection can be leveled at God. God could have made the universe in a different way. What if God created a universe where all his creation, aka us, were like Colossus or Wolverine? What would it mean then to beat somebody? It would mean it wouldn't be immoral, right? They wouldn't feel pain, they wouldn't suffer, there'd be nothing to say about it. And in fact, that could be a greeting in another universe that God created. So this isn't I think there's a very weak objection that can be used against him anyway.
It's contingent.
I just seen an interesting comment, conflate objective with unchanging throughout the entirety of this part. That's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
I've never realized it, but it could well be. I've never thought about this. But this could be very true. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, so what that would mean is that if the environment changes, then the property would change.
Well,
Yes, of course
what's
it
the
does.
Well, what's the chance of the environment changing? That would require a different universe. So as long as this universe is the case, and you believe that too, because he actually says this is the best of all universes. So in a different universe, but then that would apply to theistic morality as well. In a different universe, there would be different, quote unquote, good and bad moral precepts by this God. It's just to say there's a different universe. That's not really an objection against a mind independent view. And Tom is sort of, I think, quite rightly frowning here.
And this is something that actually Darwin speaks about. Darwin speaks that he says that if we were reared under the conditions of hive bees, we would have a totally different moral sort of outlook. We would consider perhaps mothers trying to kill their fertile daughters as something that's perfectly okay. Likewise, when Dawkins was asked about the idea of rape being as arbitrary as us having 5 fingers rather than 6, that's not something that he could deny. So it's a very fluffy, nice way of trying to defend your worldview by saying, I believe it's an emergent property, or I believe it's that. But from a purely practical perspective, morality in terms of what is right and what is wrong, one second, moral duties.
Okay, this is a red herring. Objective morality, moral duties have got nothing to do with objective morality, and we'll cover this a bit more in a moment.
And moral obligations and moral imperatives being binding upon someone in the same way as theism, that is not something any atheist worldview can actually.
No theist worldview can do it either. So your claim that you guys can do it and we can't is utter nonsense. Even if God says this is objective morality, it's not binding. Anybody can decide they don't want to follow it, and clearly many Muslims do, and so do other theists, etc. anyway. So this objection again is just self-defeating, I think is the word I'd use here.
Justified.
Wouldn't that mean that if...
Tom, sorry, so let me clarify my...
It's a shame that Hamza jumped in here, unfortunately. But anyway, because Tom could have actually, responded hopefully quite well there, but he didn't get a chance now.
Question, because you answered it, and I didn't even recognize it as anything to do with what I asked.
And here, now we're going to go off into Hamza not understanding Tom at all, which is sad, really. It's a shame that he got in. And this is the problem when you have 3-on-1, right? And especially when they're not all at a similar kind of thought process, let's put it that way, then it goes all over the show, and unfortunately that's what's going to happen now.
So maybe the way you understand objective morality is different to what I was meaning. So how do you understand objective morality?
Did you not hear what he said before? Kind of like he used the word, I think, transcendent, independent. I don't think he used the word independent of humans or whatever the words were, but he did explain it a bit earlier.
Objective means true, independent of opinion or mind.
There
So it's just something that's true, like a fact of reality is objective.
Like a standard?
No, not like a standard. No.
Yes,
See, his mind is already, his mind is fixated on a standard because God tells us that's objective. So his mind is already jumping 5 steps ahead, and now he's trying to fit or push the argument towards what he understands about it. No, he's just told you what objective is, and it's not about a standard. Not in the sense that you're meaning and trying to push it towards.
Facts. So I would say like gravity is a fact. It's an objective fact. Matter exists is an objective fact. So lots of objective facts. But I did want to ask a question to Sabor. You said
What's
that
morality. I'm trying to understand that point. Objective morality.
Law of nature, kind of like gravity. So I think it's like a law of nature kind of a thing. But Sabor, you said that if morality is contingent on the environment, that makes it subjective. Well, does that mean if morality is contingent on God's nature, that it's subjective? Because
ouch! Oh, there we go. There you go.
Depends on which God. Yeah.
Change.
We don't believe God's nature can change.
Yeah.
No, but God's can
we
change.
believe God's
What you
nature is
perceive
good.
as being a God.
But again, we can raise the same objection he did, right? If God created a different universe, then there would be different morals, right? Because that's what he's saying. It's contingent. If it was the case that we had essentially had a different universe, then it'd be different morals. Agreed. But the same thing is true for you. If God created a different universe, there would potentially be different morals as well. Especially if He created different creatures that maybe didn't feel pain, couldn't suffer, whatever the case is. It might even be in that universe that morality is meaningless.
Right, and we have a moral foundation, and that moral foundation is based upon God's commands. Now, from an atheistic perspective,
and he's going to bring in euthyphro now, because that doesn't mean that it's objective, and we'll get to that. That's why, and again,
it's very easy.
Sorry, these guys haven't really faced anybody, because they often make the claim, right? And this is what's the word, a view against some of the atheists. Whenever, certainly some of the atheists that I know and that I interact with, right, whenever these guys say, oh, we've got objective morality, the atheists don't challenge that, and we need to challenge it at every point. Most of the atheists then just sort of go around doing whatever, saying, well, I've got a different standard, as if, and it's almost like we're granting them that they've got an objective morality and they don't get challenged. And Tom will do a little bit of it here, and you'll see that they won't really know what to do with it. And of course, Hamza won't know it at all.
Easy, and you did this before when you said, yeah, the origin of life is explained by abiogenesis, which, by the way, I'm glad you didn't try and justify the very speculative models that they have for that.
Oh, I left that bit out, right? That was the part where
okay.
Where they went off into the evolution thing.
But anyway, when it comes to morality, again, it's very easy to say, yeah, you know, within our worldview, maybe it's an emergent property, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But one thing which you must recognize by now, which atheist philosophers have recognized, is that even if you try and come up with some idea of morality, at best, that will still be contingent upon whatever environmental conditions.
Okay, so what? That's not a problem. Whatever morality you come up with is contingent on the nature of God, and you don't have a way to demonstrate that nature is all good. You have to take it on faith.
Led to that particular outcome. Additionally, there is no way that you could go from that to a binding imperative that people would have to.
Of course you can, and if you can't, you're in exactly the same position.
Oblige by. There is nothing.
I have to interrupt again. Sorry, Sabor. Sorry. I'm going to try again with Tom.
Sorry. There's two things that I want Tom to justify.
Go on.
One is the existence of objective morality without God, and objective meaning it's not going to change due to environmental conditions or anything else.
No, that's not the standard. You're shifting the goalpost. That's a logical fallacy. I want you to do it in the way I want it done, even though we accepted earlier on that it was mind independent. If you wanted to challenge that, you should have done it at that point. You're now shifting the goalpost further down because you don't like the answer. No, that's a fallacy.
Two is the obligation and the duty of.
That's completely irrelevant. Thank you very much, though, for bringing a red herring in if you think that that's going to be in any way substantial.
Adhering to that moral standard. Because if you have the existence of morality without it being applied, you might as well not have objective morality.
Nonsense. Complete nonsense. Objective morality is completely independent of your objective your moral obligation. You don't have a moral obligation to follow it. You don't have to follow it. There is something that is, if you believe in objective morality, that is mind independent, that in no way binds you to actually follow it in your worldview or ours.
Because theistic worldview gives you an objective foundation and an objective implementation. And without
what the hell is an objective implementation? You're just making stuff up now.
Without these, an atheist worldview is not something that can justify morality.
That's just complete and utter nonsense. But that's why you've got to be very careful what you mean by objective. And this kind of goes off, and and Tom did explain it, but again, and I think, and obviously this was the first time he's spoken here, but I think with these guys, it bears repeating multiple times, especially when you hear things like that. Hey, what I mean by objective is mind independent, whatever the case is. I'm not saying that it has to be unchanging. And that, by the way, that wouldn't be the case in your worldview either, if we had to suppose that there was a different universe that your God created.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'll take those real quick and then let Hamza clarify his point. So we think that morality is objective and unchanging. It's grounded in nature, a necessary nature, just like you believe it's grounded in a necessary God. And so it's unchanging because it's a part of the necessary nature that can't change. And the oughtness is a really tough question. It's hard to answer, but we definitely think, we know the God answer does not answer it. And the best way would be to go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on Moral Naturalism. It goes through the entire explanation there, but there is an explanation for it from naturalism. It's just really complicated.
Tom, wait.
No, I have to speak. I'll explode if I don't speak. Honestly, right.
Okay, I mean, Hamza's jumping in like a bull into a china shop, and you're going to see all the lovely nuanced china go flying all over the show metaphorically now.
let me start again, because you hid behind the word objective and you changed it to something completely different. So let me.
He used it and he explained it at the beginning, and you either didn't hear it or didn't remember it or didn't understand it. He was very clear on what he meant by objective. And this is where Hamza is not paying attention. Either he's not paying attention, or he doesn't remember, or he can't comprehend what it was. I don't know what it is, but Tom was very clear. He didn't hide behind anything. He gave his view on what he thinks objective is. You can rewind it and you'll see he was very clear on it.
Make it.
I like Rob. Critical criticism really is that next time. Like, it really some excellent comments, because God is a subject. Okay, so you can't get an objective obligation from him. The best you can get is just a trivial statement, which is God derived. I like.
Yeah,
that.
this is a problem which we'll actually get into a little bit later on, further down. Right? Even if he was all powerful, all knowing, that doesn't mean that his what he says or his moral precepts or whatever the case is are all good. How do you know they're all good? And we'll get to that in a short while, because there's a killer question that they would have to overcome, which I've not heard people when I've had, and maybe I haven't spoken to enough sophisticated people, right? And I accept that, I haven't spoken to, philosophers of religion or whatever the case is, so they might have a much more nuanced view. But I don't think these guys are up to the task, certainly I'm talking on ethics or morality, as I think we've seen here.
Can there be a standard of right and wrong that all human beings can be measured against without a creator?
Yes.
Well, who sets that standard?
Okay. Like, as Hamza not been paying attention, he said it's, I don't necessarily agree with Tom's view of morality, objective morality, but he said that it's a law of nature. So when Hamza says who sets this, is like he's not paying attention or understanding or following the argument. There isn't a who, it's a what. In Tom's worldview, by the way, I'm not defending that is the correct one. I'm just saying in Tom's view. So if you're going to steelman Tom's position, then at least understand what his position is and then challenge it. And if you say who, that means you haven't been listening, or you're being potentially disingenuous.
The law of nature.
Nature sets the standard.
Yes.
And are we all part of the animals, or is just humans have a different kind of morality?
All applies to all animals, all conscious beings.
Right. So,
well, I'm not so sure about that. I think in order for... Well, I understand what he means, as in
Exactly, there's a grade.
Yeah. I think what he's... Okay, so let me see if I can... What he means, I think, is that the law of nature brings forth this objective morality, but I think we're the only sort of species that can delve into it. When a lion kills a zebra or whatever, it isn't that the lion is being... doing something that is objectively wrong from its point of view. We could judge it, and he does in his worldview, because he brings in an extra layer to it, which is this involuntary imposition of will. So then he can say a lion is wrong, but without that, bringing that in, you can't say that a lion is wrong, because it's just doing what it's doing, and it doesn't have the ability to differentiate what we would call right and wrong objectively.
And on the other hand, on the other hand, a dog can show a guilty conscience, or you get altruism amongst even lower grade animals. Like I've seen a cat, for example, help a duckling out of the water so it can catch up with the mother. So there's different examples of this.
Yeah.
If we want to kill, say for example, you marry another woman and she's already got kids, and you want to kill those kids because you want her to have your kids. You're saying that's morally
the grade,
okay.
Exactly. It's not absolute. It is an objective standard that you have, but it's not absolute. So you need to take it with a pinch of salt and adjust it to the context and the environment.
Yeah, that's why I think that his view is a bit difficult. Like I say, he has been challenged by Alex Malpass, and actually I'll put it because it seems relevant at this moment in time. So I'll pop this in the chat for those that are interested. You can actually go and watch this. Here it is. I'm putting this in the chat. Alex Malpass is a professional philosopher. He's an atheist, and he actually challenged Tom on his objective morality. And I'm not convinced that the Tom's objective morality is one that I would follow, or that he's got sufficiently strong reasons, at least from my lights, to believe in. Obviously, he does, and that's fine. And we can differ, right? As atheists, we can differ on these points.
Yes, of course.
But I think
this is the whole point. But it's a good point that you're making now, that people understand that there is no consensus amongst atheists is just the one single point, and that is we don't believe gods or goddesses exist, and that is it. Other than that, we differ on almost everything. So they try and put this like a format, a form of a religion, and try to put this on the oven and make it grow so that it becomes much like a religion. It doesn't work like that, and this is the problem that they have. It doesn't work on anything that they are used to, and this is why they have this huge problem understanding it.
Yeah. But we haven't really got to the meat of this yet either, because at the moment they're critiquing Tom's view, and we really need to get back to, the part where Imran put forward his view, and that's what I missed doing last night. I really wanted to do that, and then they wanted to get me off the show, unfortunately.
Immoral. That's immoral.
Well, that would be morally okay, isn't it? Because animals do that.
No, the fact that they do it doesn't make it immoral. Humans do lots of
What makes it immoral?
The fact that it's an involuntary imposition on will.
Okay, so he's bringing in his extra term here to then say that what animals do is immoral. That's a unique, as far as I can tell at least, that's a unique Tom Jump extra feature, if you like, that he's bringing in. I'm not aware of anybody else trying to argue like that. I could be wrong. There could actually be other people that are doing that. But that's the only way you could do it with animals, is say involuntary imposition of will, which basically means that a lion shouldn't, in a perfect world, impose on the will of a zebra, for example. But that's certainly not a standard view that most people talking about ethics and morals take. They would say, and I would agree, that lions don't do anything that is objectively wrong. They just do what they do. You'd have to understand what objective morality is in order for you to violate it. If you didn't know what it was, then you couldn't violate. Which is why, intuitively, we never say, "Oh well, a bear is guilty of murder," or whatever the case is. A bear is just doing what a bear is doing. It's not as if a bear is able to contemplate the consequences of its actions in the sense that we are able to.
I'm sorry.
Why is that immoral?
Why is that immoral?
That's the theory that I
Who
subscribe
says it's
to.
immoral? Who says it's immoral?
Nature does. It's the nature's moral law.
Nature does it.
Things in nature do it.
Right. So where does nature say it's immoral? Sorry.
It's the law of nature.
The
So
law of
the law of
nature says
gravity.
it's immoral for for lions to kill the cubs of other lions. Where does it say that?
Yes.
I'm not sure I agree with that part of it. It's not that's not the law. It's the extra part that Tom has inserted, the involuntary imposition of will. I don't think that he can derive that from nature. I think that's an extra reasoned, argument or whatever you want to call it, that he's inserting in there to make the case there. I don't think, or at least I haven't heard how he gets from the law of nature to the involuntary imposition of will. I'm not sure you can derive that from nature.
It's just a law of nature. So just
Where
like
do you get this information from, Tom?
we use moral intuition and moral progress to create a model.
Who's moral intuition?
Wait. Moral intuition is an evolved capacity that's dependent again on your environmental conditions. So if you have a different environmental condition, you'll have different moral intuitions and therefore different moral philosophies.
But again, that would be external of human opinion. So again, that you can still call it objective. This is not an argument against objective, unless you want to challenge the definition of objective, which you didn't do in the beginning.
Right. Moral intuition isn't the same as objective morality. Moral intuition is the phenomenon we experience of morality. Like when we think of morality, we're thinking of moral intuitions and moral progress.
Can I ask a clarifying
We
question?
measure our morality against what nature says.
Yes.
And nature says it does it. So where does nature say a lion killing another lion, other cubs is wrong?
Well, the law
Because
would be,
according to survival of the fittest, it's right. So
Uh,
who says it's wrong?
no, survival of the fittest has nothing to do with morality. So morality would be
No. The lion killing the cubs of the other of the female to have his own cubs, which are going to be with and stronger. That's the right thing to do in survival of the fittest, or not?
no, it has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's just what produces
No.
survival.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in nature, according to the Darwinism, survival of the fittest, and all of this business. This is part. Nature does this thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
Nature's cruel, if you like. They say nature's cruel. In that, I've seen a lot of videos recently where I see horrible things, animals doing horrible things to each other, and then always somebody puts, "Oh, nature's."
Yeah, but it's horrible by our standards, right? I know Tom wants to say that it's horrible, wrong by our standards, if you like, or evil, or whatever term you want to use. But then you have to insert extra clauses in order to get there. Otherwise,
I think
it's
what
just-
he's doing, he's extending free will into the animal kingdom. I think this is what I understand he's doing.
who?
Tom Jump.
Well, I'm not sure he's doing that as much as he's going, hey, what he's trying to argue is, hey, here's a law of nature, and part of the law of nature is kind of the foundation, and from that we can reason that an involuntary imposition of will is the standard by which we can judge things to be right and wrong, and
Right.
and it comes
Exactly.
from nature in some way. I don't see the connection between nature and the involuntary imposition of will. I think he's coming up with that as a reason, but I don't know how he grounds that in nature itself. But in that case,
No,
if
I
you're
don't
going to
think
take
you
that,
can.
I'm not sure that you can either, but I could be wrong. I mean, maybe he's got an argument for it that I haven't heard. I don't think he gives it here in any way. But it's a shame as well that it went off on this,
Hamza
all the way
doesn't
off
get
onto
it,
his
yeah.
thing, because, then they're going to challenge it. And really it was challenged for against Imram's claim, which was, the whole thing about evil and so forth that we did in part 1.
It's cruel. Like when, for example, an eagle, it lands on a rabbit and the rabbit's there under its talons trying to get away and the eagle's just plucking away at its back. Is this morally wrong?
Yes.
According to who?
According to the theory of morality that I think is correct.
Oops.
And this is what I'm trying to understand. Where does this theory come from?
The
What's
same
your
place-
standard bearer? What are you measuring?
He's repeated it. Now, again, whether you agree with Tom or not,
Yeah, exactly.
at least listen
doesn't
or
matter.
try to understand his position. I think one of the most charitable things you can do is listen to a person's position and try and understand it, even if you vehemently disagree with it. But he said it multiple times, that it comes from a law of nature, and then he inserts this kind of reasoned argument on top of that, which is this involuntary imposition of will. How is this not clear that that's his view, that you have to keep asking this question?
And if you don't agree with it, then give him counter arguments. This is the whole point. This is what you do.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that Hamza's just not understanding it. So if Hamza's not understanding it, he can't remotely give a counter argument if you really don't understand what's being offered to you here. And this is kind of a unique Tom Jump thing as far as I've heard. So these guys would never have encountered this before. So now they're trying to think on the hoof here, but their objections are kind of missing the mark because they don't actually understand his view. And there are counters to his view, but they just don't understand it at this stage.
You see an eagle on the top of a rabbit biting away at its back while it's trying to escape. What are you measuring its actions against?
The best possible world.
Aha.
So we compare this world where this thing happens to a world where it didn't happen.
So wait. The best.
This is
why
where
is the
Subur
best?
comes in with his
What is the best?
zebra.
The best possible world would be one where there's no involuntary imposition of will, or where you can't ever force any other conscious being to do anything they don't consent to.
you're trying
Okay,
to let-
that's a
you're trying to-
that's a crazy thing. That's too idealistic.
Well, I mean, maybe in a pragmatic sense, but what he's putting forward is an argument in principle, and what they call possible world semantics. You can imagine a world where no creature imposes on the will of another creature. That's his view of what the best possible world is, with every creature is free to do whatever it wants to do as long as it doesn't impose on another creature. Now, you could probably argue in principle that could be a problem. I mean, again, we'd have to think more on this, and I'm sure there's philosophers that have done on that particular thing. But it's just a hypothetical view on what a best possible world could be, and again, there could be an argument against it, but just thinking about it very briefly, and I haven't delved into it that much, it doesn't seem to be contradictory on the face of it, but I could be wrong about that. There could be some form of contradiction within that actually makes that impossible or absurd. But on the face of it, just listening to it very briefly there, if there were a world where creatures could act as freely as possible without interfering with another creature's will, then that's what he would consider the best possible world.
but
And
you
by
have
that
the
would
food
be the
chain.
most moral world.
But you have the food chain. You can't get past that.
Well, but he'll actually say it now shortly. That food chain would not the best possible world would include a world where no other animal eats another animal. The only thing that would happen is
That's exactly.
that
that's what
these
I'm
animals
saying.
would eat
It's
non-animals.
utopian.
Yeah. But when I say there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing wrong with it as a principle.
Oh, with the thoughts experiment.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it's like a
fine,
moral
cool, yeah.
principle that he's putting forward as a best possible. Not that it would happen in, but it's not
not
impossible
practical.
in reality unless there's a contradiction. We could imagine that a world could be created like that. I mean, you could put up barriers, I guess, but I don't see that it's impossible to imagine a world like that. So if there's a contradiction, then that would fly in the face of Tom's view on this.
Less than suffering?
No, suffering, you can choose to suffer. That's totally fine. It's the involuntary imposition of will. So the best possible world is one where you can never force anyone to do anything they don't consent to. And
Okay, so you're saying the best possible world is where an eagle can't sit on the back of a rabbit and eat it?
Yes.
So in your world, then eagles don't eat rabbits?
Yes. All the rabbits would be free and the eagles would be free and they wouldn't need to kill each other to survive. That would be the best world.
And that's your morality?
That's consistent, yeah.
Could I ask a question?
That's the
Because
standard, yeah.
it's fascinating what you're saying.
Yeah, so again, these guys would never have heard of this before. And it is, like I say, quite a unique T-jump thing as far as I can tell. At least I haven't heard anybody else talk about this, right? So now they've kind of got to try and take this in and try and object to it, obviously.
I mean, it's a sound argument. I mean, that's it, finished.
Well, it's potentially valid. I'm not sure if it's sound, because soundness goes towards the content, validity goes towards the structure. In other words,
Sorry,
if the structure is valid, that doesn't involve a contradiction, then you could say it's valid. But valid is a low, relatively, or should be a relatively low bar. Soundness is normally where the argument sort of gets going.
And to be honest with you, this is...
Hang on, sorry. I just want to understand this. Isn't sound also an indication that it is without internal contradictions? There you go.
Well, that's normally validity. So validity goes towards the structure, i.e. that it's rational, that the conclusion follows from the premises, and if the premises are true, then the conclusion is necessarily true. So that's all around the structure, the logical part of the argument.
Exactly.
But then the soundness goes towards the content. What makes up that? What's the arguments that will support this valid, logical structure of an argument? If you talk about a syllogism or even an informal argument, what is the content that's going to, prop up this view? And so soundness is where we normally have the discussion. I mean, it's rare, especially in philosophical levels. Although somebody like Matt Slick, his tag argument was actually was invalid. Right, this was shown by Alex Malpass. That's a rare sort of thing. Normally, at a higher level, the arguments will be valid, but there will always be a challenge against the soundness of the arguments. That's typically how I've understood it, at least.
It seems really counterintuitive what you're...
But at this level, of course, with I'm not saying with Tom so much, but with the other guys, we would be looking at the validity very seriously, because I wouldn't take their validity as being entirely rational or perfectly valid. So I'd definitely be starting there. But with higher level people, with more of an expert, even there you'd still look at it, but it's very likely that they would have a valid argument, and then it would go towards the sound. But with these guys, I'd be checking their validity. I wouldn't even be taking their validity in any way for granted.
Well, if I see Hamza's face and I see what Imran is doing, and Sabur doesn't follow anyway, they are completely
I think they're all trying to
stumped.
figure this out, right? They're all trying to, because this is something new to them. They've never sort of come across this before, probably.
I'm going to start from the basics again, and tell me if I'm misunderstanding you, Tom. So what you've said to me is that you believe in a theory of morality, which you say is objective, and you say it's an emergent property, a higher order emergent property. So essentially, we mentioned that it would necessarily be dependent upon the circumstances that brought about that property. And if those circumstances were different, this would change. But you said this is like this morality would be like a law of nature, like gravity.
Yeah. What I said there is it's related to nature in the same way morality is related to God in your worldview. So it's necessary and unchanging in my worldview. It's like a fundamental part of nature, like you think it's a fundamental part of God.
So is there anything in nature that becomes part of our nature? So this is an emergent property that we are able to ignore or sideline. So what I mean by this is the lion that's has evolved to eat meat as primarily its source of diet, able to go off and become a vegetarian?
Oh my word! That's like a really, that's a really. It tells me that he's not really understanding the argument.
Exactly.
Because what I think he's trying to drive at, he wants to see whether an animal can violate this natural law, and if then presumably in his mind, if an animal can violate this, well then this law of nature isn't objective. No, that's not the case, right? If that's where he's driving towards. But I think this is like very tendential type of, there's much, but again, they haven't heard of it before, so I suppose we've got to give them a bit of leeway here. But it's a very
neither have
tendential
we,
type
but
of
we don't
point.
ask stupid questions like that. I'm sorry.
I would say no. So what I'm asking you the same question about this morality that you say comes from emergent properties within nature. So the question that first came to my mind is, why is it then that all human beings, well, vast majority of human beings, don't agree on what their moral values are?
Well, okay, but that's your claim. Which human beings? Most human beings believe that murder or rape is wrong. That there's a number of things that most human beings do agree on. Yes, they don't agree on other things. So to either cherry pick or to generalize that most human beings don't agree, what is it that they don't agree on? And hey, don't you think they all agree on X, Y, and Z? Like I've said. So you've got to be a bit careful here when they start making generalized statements like this. We've got to sort of jump in there quite quickly.
I've seen many examples of this, and the common one is something like looking at what happened in the Holocaust, for example. But other examples, you can go to China now. There's lots of things that are happening, around the world which are terrible, which you and I would say are wrong, morally wrong. We wouldn't use the word objective for that. Why is this morality which is derived from nature not something that is binding upon us? How are we able to go against our nature?
In the same way that the theists are able to go against the so-called nature of God. Exactly the same way. This is not difficult.
Yeah, so there's two things we asked there. One was, how can we go against a law of nature or something like that? Well, there's certain laws that are non-binding, like gravity. We can go against gravity. We can fly. We can build spaceships and things. The law isn't powerful enough to force us to abide by it, but it does suggest that we should go in a...
Exactly the same as your God. Either not powerful enough, or he doesn't want to invoke his power and says, hey, you supposedly got free will, but I'm telling you what to do. So it's the same thing in their worldview.
Certain direction. So the moral law is the same kind of a thing. It has an impact on us emotionally that we can feel, but it's not so strong that it forces us to abide by it. So that's why potentially a lion could become a vegetarian if we changed its biology a little bit and gave it the technology to become a vegetarian. But the second thing you asked was, why is there disagreement, moral disagreement? Well, we know that our brains are fallible. We make mistakes all the time. People have delusions, illusions. We see things funny, and people can disagree about what. There's the color, that dress that's like white or blue on the internet. There's a big meme about it, and people disagreed. Well, was it white or was it blue? Because of the way their brains processed information. Some were right, some were wrong. And so that's the same applies to morality, is that just like our brains can misdiagnose certain things about reality, like the color of a dress, it can also misdiagnose intuitions about morality. It's just a feature of the brain.
Excellent. So that's really what I was hoping that you were going to say, something along this line, because what you're saying to me is that we can see it differently. We can sense it differently.
Yeah, but that's not an argument against it being objective.
Some people like Coke, some people like Pepsi.
Theists can see it differently. Theists read their holy scriptures and do things that you theists believe is immoral. You guys supposedly call out ISIS and say that's immoral. They look at their book and go, no, I'm following the book. So somebody's seeing it incorrectly. Same thing for you guys.
We can respond to it differently. And therefore, this morality that we have within us, you say it's an emergent property that comes because of the laws of nature, is something that we can be viewed differently depending upon your senses. So that would make it everything but objective. Okay,
that's where he was going, right? And I think we've just answered that. And in the same way that they believe that everybody has a fitra, a built-in, some sort of built-in moral thing, theists do evil things all the time. And Tom's view is that it's a brain chemistry, and you could say the same about. You'd have to argue that it's that your people, whichever people that are doing those evil things, there's a brain chemistry or misfiring there as well. So that doesn't make it not objective, unless you're going to accept that same standard for God and say, hang on, but there's all these theists who are not following the objectively right way, whatever that's supposed to be, and which means that your God's commands aren't actually objective.
So, for example, and I'm bringing religion into this, for a theist, for example, if we have a transcendent anchor for our morality, it doesn't matter on my particular way of seeing it, or Hamza's particular way of seeing it, or anyone else's particular way of seeing it, it would be the same. I cannot, from my own senses, say, well, actually, for me, this doesn't really apply, I'm going to do something else. And so I think that
Robert,
it's a great.
I just want to take this off. I find this so funny. We're talking about morality, and somebody comes here and makes this really inane comment. Why don't you go on the live stream and debunk them? Barking in your house isn't doing anything. Now, don't you have any moral values? Don't you think that you should ask and see what happens? Or why do you go off and just make unwarranted, unsubstantiated claims? If you wait 10 minutes, I'm going to go on the live stream and debunk them. So,
I sort of bypassed that. Either they didn't see me on the show yesterday, they didn't know that you're actually coming up on this particular stream in a short while anyway, right? But I don't expect them to give an apology, right, when they actually see this coming up. They're just jumping the gun, right?
And this is the morality that we're talking about, right?
Attempt at trying to show an objective morality within a natural world, but a natural world is necessarily dependent upon the circumstances that brings it about.
Just like your objective morality is dependent on the nature of God.
And the fact that you said we're fallible and our senses are fallible, and therefore its impact upon us is variable, speaks against the whole.
Well, then it speaks against your worldview as well, and you don't even realize it. So if you're going to bring this argument, it's self-defeating against your worldview. And to say that, hey, God gave it to you, doesn't get you out of... This is your critique, but it's a self-detonating critique against you as well.
The whole idea of being objective in the first place. So I'm not really getting what you're saying, Tom, if I'm honest.
Well, can I ask you...
Okay, the fact that you're not getting it doesn't mean that it's not the case, and your objection, like I say, is self-defeating against you.
What do you mean by that? Like we can see the dress. We know that there's a picture of a dress, and to some people it looks white, and to some people it looks blue. We see it differently, but there is an objective truth there. The dress is actually a blue dress. We know for a fact that we can actually, people who own the dress can show you the dress. So the fact that people see it doesn't mean there isn't an objective truth to the color of the dress. They just have their senses are not correct. Their senses are not objectively perfect.
Sure.
So morality.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I know that.
Okay, listen to this.
We've been doing that a lot, and I apologize for that.
But isn't that kind of hypocritical? You're saying you're doing something morally wrong because you're apologizing for it, but you're going to continue doing that. To me, that's hypocritical, but I could be wrong. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've been hitting you in the face. As I hit you in the face, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to hit you one more time in the face anyway.
But what this is the point, exactly the point that I'm making. When you have a morality that's grounded in a transcendent being like a creator, it doesn't matter what I see.
It doesn't. He's just said to you the same thing. Like, how is it that you don't understand this? He's just said with the dress, it doesn't matter what people believe about it. There's still a blue dress there. The same as your claim about God. But somehow you think that that's not the case because it's comes from a natural basis.
It doesn't matter what somebody else see. Like you're saying, the owner is telling you this is how it is.
Hello, you've just said it yourself. You have just contradicted yourself. You said that his one doesn't do it, and you've just agreed with him that the owner does say it. In his example, that's the owner. In your example, God is your owner. It's the same thing.
Now, the fact that everyone else is trying to interpret this, the color of this dress.
Okay, replace now, listen, as you're listening to this, if you're a viewer, replace the color of this dress with God's commands. And let's just see how well this works in the same way.
Tells you that their interpretation is not objective. What they need is the owner to tell them this is the objective color, irrespective of your perspective, irrespective of your view.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
Doesn't that, you see, if you replace, whatever it is, their thing or the owner with God, or objective morality from a Muslim point of view, it works exactly this. Just replace the words and the objection stands against you. So this objection is, and if Tom is going to accept that, you have to accept it as well.
I say that we need to filter out which intuitions are the correct ones and incorrect ones and find some objective way to find the truth. Because I think that they're right. The fact that our senses are fallible means there needs to be some objective thing independent of our senses, like a law of nature. Laws of nature are objective. And so if there's a law of nature that is morality and we can discover that law, then we can find out whose intuitions are correct and whose intuitions are incorrect, and we can know what objective morality is, just like we can know what the color of the dress is.
But this is where the other. So one is the idea of that perceptions can change, and therefore what we're looking at can appear different to us, unless the owner of that drastic, for example, that you've used tells us what it is. The second thing is actually that this emergent property that comes from our evolution, essentially, and if the circumstances of the evolution were different, then the emergent property would be different. So there is a certain property in water, for example. The molecules separately don't show this property of wetness, but when you bring them together in a sufficient quantity, we get this property of wetness.
I think he's heard that from Skydive Phil, actually, and he's now bringing it here because he thinks it's an objection. Actually, it's not, though, of course.
Now, if the structure of the atoms was different, and the electrons, the particle, the way that they deal with electrons was different, and we didn't get the hydrogen bonds, for example, then you wouldn't get this emergent property occurring. You may get something else occurring, and that would depend upon the original circumstances. So what we're seeing is that let's take, for example, let's assume that what you're saying is right, that you have an emergent property within you that gives you a sense of morality. If the fundamental underlying circumstances that brought this about were different, then you would have a different emergent property with a different set of moral values based upon that. Does that make sense?
All you're saying is that in different universe, things would be different.
Yeah.
In a different universe created by God, things could be different as well.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But the emergent property isn't in me. The emergent property is a law of nature. It exists like gravity. So it's a thing that exists in the universe independently of me.
The same would apply, I think.
Well, do you remember how you believe that morality is a part of God's nature? And so if God could change, well, then that would make morality subjective. But God can't change, right?
Yeah, definitionally, yeah. Definitionally, God cannot change.
So
Okay, but then he's not omniscient. No, sorry, omnipotent. Because now you're limiting God and saying he can't change. You've got to be a bit careful with the claims you make here.
in my worldview, the same thing applies to nature. Definitionally, that part of nature can't change. It's a necessary part of nature.
Okay.
So it would be the same solution to how you think morality is objective because it's tied to God, but God can't change, so that's fine.
So
I think
how is it? So that's really great. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring a counter to the idea that nature is ever changing by saying this bit of nature doesn't change. Because nature, by definition, is evolving. Because we had from the inflation to
let it. Yeah. Tom's going to counter this now.
Inanimate things being in existence, to abiogenesis, the formation of self-replicating proteins, and then to these creatures that evolve. This is the theory behind it. So everything is changing. We don't see a static nature, unchanging nature. Everything actually is changing. It seems almost ad hoc that you're bringing in a unchanging part of nature. It almost seems to be that you're bringing it in as a convenience to respond to the theist claim that God is unchanging definitionally. So where are you? What's your evidence to say that this part of nature is unchanging? Where are you getting this from?
Laws of physics. So parts of nature change, but most of nature doesn't change.
Correct. There's many things in nature that are unchanging in the sense that they are consistent. They work
like the laws of nature.
Reliable. Yeah. And physics, whatever it may be, right? So there's many things that don't. So cherry picking certain things that change, and the law of entropy, for example, that's in effect, right? I mean, it could be violated by, say, like a resurrection event, which is what I think, then you could say, well, something's changing one of these sort of seemingly incredibly reliable or almost unbreakable type of laws. But, there's things that are unchanging. That's what he's appealing to. And you're appealing to other things and saying, hang on a moment, what you mean by the law of nature is changing. No, Tom is not talking about those things.
The laws of physics, second law of thermodynamics, first law of energy cannot be created or destroyed, the third and fourth law, the zeroth law of thermodynamics, those things don't change. So there's lots of parts of nature that don't change. The vacuum states don't change. Our discoveries in emergent space-time doesn't change. All of the basic physics are not changing. Certain things change, like interactions between particles, but
isn't quantum mechanics changing?
Oh, God, I heard something.
No?
That's the vacuum states.
It's not understood, but that's different.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question to you, Tom?
Sure.
Are you a vegetarian?
No.
You're not vegetarian. So you think it's morally okay to eat animals?
Nope. I think I'm immoral for eating meat, but I really just like.
Oh, you think you're immoral for eating meat? Okay, that's cool.
Yep.
And do you accept if because evolution obviously doesn't disprove a creator, so you must have other reasons for rejecting a creator. if this theistic creator does exist, do you accept that should be the standard of objective morality if it created everything?
Right.
No.
Now we're getting into the meat of it. Thank goodness Hamza brought this back now. Now we're getting into now he's unknowing to himself. He's now actually opening himself up for critique here. So let's see how this goes.
And laws?
No, because I think there's problems with that. Called like the euthyphro dilemma, I think is a good objection. Like even if God exists, I don't think it could actually work as a basis of objective morality because for
You don't think a creator that created everything and knows how everything works to the smallest detail and knows what's benefits and knows what harm?
Okay, so he's begging the question here, right? Knows what's benefits and knows what harm. That's the entire argument that Tom is arguing against. So you can't just say in your premise that he knows what's good and bad, because Tom's objection is, but hey, how do we know that he knows what's good and bad? How are we going to accept? How does God himself know that? Never mind us. That was the question that was asked in Speaker's Corner, right? If you remember with that video with Hijab that sent him into a complete tailspin where he wanted to bet some money, and then when the guy, he started to bring up the liar's paradox, he wouldn't give him the money. And this guy said the same thing, right? This is going to detonate. I'm not going to be too critical of Hamza here in the sense that he just doesn't know what he's talking about here, and so he really needs to understand this better. I'm going to leave it at that. Stops. If you want to go in deeper, that's fine, especially on the euthyphro demo. But you're going to see now that he really doesn't understand, and he thinks that one follows from the other.
Is it the standard of what's...
Hang on, just a sec, because I did not see this. Because remember, we were on the Gin and Tonic show, and then we were on the Discord channel.
Yeah.
So I did not watch this, and I'm seeing this now for the very first time. And
Okay,
I didn't know that I was saying later the same identical thing, word for word. So I did not copy him. I did not. I mean, there's a couple hundred. I don't know. People who can vouch for that. I could not possibly have seen this, but I copied this like nearly word for word a little bit later. So it's quite funny.
Yeah. So you would hear it twice.
No, I don't think that works because of the is-ought distinction and the euthyphro dilemma. They seem to
Of the what?
disprove that. The euthyphro dilemma?
What's that?
Oh, God.
Is something good because God says it's good, or did God say it's good because it's good based off of an independent standard? It's a dilemma Euthyphro asked in one of his dialogues. And the problem is that if it's only good because God says it's good, well, then it's arbitrary. But if God says it's good because it's good on an independent standard, well, then you don't need the God because it's
very nice explanation.
Very nice. I mean, that's the short version of it. And again, I'm not going to be too critical of Hamza. He just doesn't understand what has been said. And I think that's enough to say at the moment. If somebody doesn't understand it, I think what would be helpful, though, here, if I were to critique Hamza, is if you don't understand, say, okay, I don't understand that, let me go away and look at it. Because I think now, based on his ignorance, he's going to misunderstand it even worse and really not get to it. And even after this, on his review of this afterwards, he said he's going to go and look into it because he's never seen it. Okay, well, that's something to be, I can certainly say, okay, so Hamza, that's a good thing. If there's something you don't understand or have not heard of before, then I think it is a virtuous thing to actually go and look into it. But I think at that stage you should have perhaps just said, okay, I don't really understand. Let me sit back and listen. Imran, do you understand this? Do you want to tackle this? Because I don't really understand this. So, or maybe ask him to re-explain it.
He doesn't look like he does. I mean, Imran, he doesn't look like he understands.
I don't know if he does. Yeah, I don't know.
I think is good, objectively, for human beings. Why is that arbitrary?
Because it's only good because God said it. Like if I was walking, so like let me give you an example. Like if I was walking down the street and you asked me, well, what is 3 feet long? And I said that stick is 3 feet long. Well, if it's only 3 feet because I chose it, well, I could have chosen any stick of any length and said, well, this is the 3 foot long stick. So the actual length of the stick is arbitrary. But if I said,
no, that's a very good example. And Hamza saying no here, unfortunately demonstrates his ignorance and not understanding what Thomas just said. He's used the analogy there to show you that, if you walk down a street and you pick a stick out and just say it's 3 meters, and if you're the person who's claiming it's 3 meters without some other standard, then you claim it's 3 meters and everybody else either has to abide by it or they're going to come up with their own standard. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. And the fact that he says no here really tells me that he doesn't understand it. And really at this stage he should have sort of passed the baton on to Imran and seen whether Imran could do anything.
No, you misunderstood, my man. Okay, if this theistic God exists, it created us, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
and it knows what benefits us, yeah?
Okay, that's begging the question. How do we know that he knows what benefits us? That's your claim, and that's what's under dispute. Tom is disputing that claim. So you begging the question here isn't a good response. It's a logical fallacy.
Sure.
And it knows what harms us, yeah?
Yep.
And it knows what actions lead to that
I think Tom should have said no there, but okay, that's fine.
harm, and it knows what actions lead to that good, isn't it?
That's your claim, and Tom is going, well, how do we know that? That's the claim that he makes or that you make. How do we know how do we know in fact that is the case? Because remember, objective needs to be mind independent. It cannot be just somebody's whim, even God's whim, unless you can show that there's that it follows that because he's all powerful and all knowledgeable, therefore whatever he says is good. That doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur. So you can't get there from that argument.
Sure.
So following that guidance would be objective standard of doing what's right and what's wrong.
No, it's not. Okay, well, Tom will say that now himself.
Isn't it?
No, that would be consequentialism. That would not be objective morality.
What?
It's a shame, and this is one thing, of course. And if you don't know the guys, you don't know the guys. But bringing in other terms like confuses them even more. And again, I don't think that's helpful. So when he brought in consequentialism, at least Hamza, maybe even Imran, has never heard of that. I mean, it's a well-known philosophical term if you know it. And I'm no expert at all, but I understand a few of these sort of almost basic terms. But I don't think it's helpful to bring in these extra terms because it now goes off on a bit of a tangent here.
Doing something because it's good for you.
I'll make it easy for you. We believe our theistic creator says alcohol is bad for you and forbidden.
No,
Okay.
it didn't.
If that
Okay, that's yes, we can go down that route with the Quran and so forth. That's his interpretation of what the Quran says. That's true. What Stops is saying, we could bring up the verse here and show that it doesn't actually say alcohol, does it? But they interpret it to mean alcohol. But that's fine. Let's go
He
with that
says
for the
both.
moment.
He says alcohol and forbidden. It doesn't say either.
Yeah, okay. But let's go with that for the sake of it. Let's go with.
Yeah, but it shows you how little they know of the Quran. This is always the astonishing thing. They make all these claims, and you think automatically, if you're not well read in this, you think, well, he's a Muslim, he must know what he's talking about, so you accept it. No, it's wrong.
creator does exist,
Sorry.
No, I was finished.
No, sorry, I pushed the button by mistake there. Okay.
then that standard would be the correct standard when it comes to measuring the right or wrong of alcohol. Would you not agree?
Well, no, that's the part that we can't actually say. Why is it wrong to drink alcohol? Is it just wrong?
No,
because...
that's not the point here.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Exactly.
That is exactly the point. The fact that you say no, just underscores that you don't understand the euthyphro dilemma.
Yeah, but Imran isn't
greatest-
jumping in either.
No, he's not. He's just yeah, you're right. He might not really have a good grasp. Although this was his sort of segment, right? So you would expect him to have a better sort of grasp and want to argue against this, but he's leaving it to Hamza, who really doesn't understand this.
It says it's wrong. It's wrong.
No, Hamza, that's begging the question. You repeating it over and over doesn't make it a strong argument. The point under contention is, how do you know that it's wrong? Just because he says so? Or why should somebody accept that? As Tom says, you need to give a reason, and I think he'll say it again now.
Well, that's the point of the euthyphro dilemma. The reason that doesn't work as objective morality is you have to give a reason why is it immoral. Is it moral because the
Doesn't
God
need to.
said it?
Yes, you do, Hamza. That's the point of the dilemma. Okay, we try not to be hard on him here. But it's okay if you don't understand something, but then to jump in with both feet and just start sinking immediately
And to
into
search yourself
quicksand
on top of it, yeah.
and not realize that you're sinking,
Yeah.
I think is doubly bad, right?
Yeah.
If I tell my daughter something, it's wrong.
Okay, one thing to note, that if you're listening to this, as soon as a Muslim apologist makes an analogy, you are 99% guaranteed it's going to be disanalogous. Listen to this now, see whether it's true.
I don't need to give her the full details why it's wrong. I know it's wrong because I know more than she does.
How do you know more than she does? And if she asks you why it's wrong, would you not be under an obligation to do it? If she's
Exactly.
just doing it because you tell her to, well, then it's like a might makes right, or it's an authoritarian. But any person who's curious is going to ask, hey, Daddy, why is it wrong? And at that point, you would need to give a reason. And that's essentially in your quote-unquote analogy, that's what Tom is doing. He's asking God, if you like, why is it wrong? I'm not just going to accept it because you say so. And trust you. Well, why would I trust you? You could be mistaken.
She can't comprehend certain danger and such. I can. I don't need to go to the full detail. I say, look, just listen to me. You know I'm your father.
Okay, but all you're saying is might makes right. or I'm right, or it's morally good because I know more than you. Well, no, that's not a sufficient answer, especially from a God.
You know I know more than you, and she'll listen to me, yeah?
Sure.
Right.
Hopefully.
Now, right, so in the same sense, the creator knows me better than I know myself. So some dangers I can't comprehend, my creator can comprehend. So therefore, it only makes logical sense for me to measure my right and wrong to the standard, which is the one who created me.
No, that doesn't follow. That's
No.
a non sequitur. Non sequitur.
just
It
a
doesn't
claim.
follow. Yeah, it doesn't follow. And maybe this is a good point to bring this in here quickly now, because you could make the counter argument. You could say to Hamza, "Hey, Hamza, how do you know that your God is in fact giving you, quote unquote, the best moral advice? How do you know it's not Satan pretending to be God and giving you advice that you think is correct, but in actual fact may not be correct? How do you overcome this objection?" Because the opposite postulation is exactly that. And and by the way, any answer you give must be able to overcome the objection, which is, well, that's exactly what Satan would do if he was trying to deceive you. So, and if you can do that, I'll be very interested to hear it.
Who knows more than I know? Would you not agree?
No, that's where most philosophers say that doesn't
all right.
work.
If you think you know what's better for you than your creator,
It's not about knowing what's better. It's about God's understanding from God. Why is something good or bad? Why is it good? And to just say it's good because I say so is just an authoritarian and an ad hoc point of view. Tom is quite right to say, well, why is it good? Give me some reason why it's good. I'm not just going to accept it because you're my creator. No, that's not acceptable. The fact that that's what you want to do because of your worldview and you're taught what to think and not how to think, okay, that's fine. You can do that. But anybody else who's thinking critically, there's the key word critically, is actually going to ask the question, why is it good? And you should. And supposedly, according to you guys, the Quran instructs you, according to you guys, to think about these things. Instead, you're just accepting it because he made you. You need to give a reason why you're accepting it. And to say just because he made me, that's a non sequitur.
you're delusional, mate.
The irony of that statement, the irony of saying to Tom that he's delusional, is again one of those where's my knife moments.
It's not about knowing what's better. It's about what morality is. So the question
And
is,
that's what morality is, you see, is to benefit you.
well, that's
How do you know what benefits you?
consequentialism. So I don't think
No, no. That's
He didn't know what consequentialism is, and he's saying no.
only in your worldview. In a theistic creator's worldview, it is not consequentialism. It's actually deliberate.
Okay, he really has no clue here. Even religious philosophers accept consequentialism as an idea. It's crazy.
what benefits you. That's literally the definition of consequentialism.
No, consequential when it just accidentally benefits you.
No, that's not the case. See, you shouldn't jump in with both feet where you really don't have a clue what you're talking about.
So, for example, if my creator knows that alcohol is bad for me and he says don't drink alcohol, and then I don't drink alcohol, and then I see the people who do drink alcohol, it is bad for them.
Do you see what he did there? And Imran will do it too. What did he just do there? He appealed to something outside of his creator to back up why it was wrong. And that's exactly what Tom has been asking him. What's the reason? And if he said, well, hey, it's because I observe people around me who appear to be having a negative effect, well, now you've undercut your argument, because now you're looking outside of God for a standard to justify why it's right. And that's exactly what Tom was asking for.
Therefore, it's not a consequence, is it? In that sense, it's basically me following the advice of my supreme guide.
No, it's not just you doing that. You're looking around. You just said it yourself. And that's what confirms for you that it's wrong, not just that you're taking it on faith. And that's what Tom is asking for from your God.
Consequentialism is the position in philosophy that you should do what's good for you, and that's what's moral.
But who determines what's good for you?
Whatever, it's like any version that does that is a kind of
This
consequentialism.
is the whole point here. You see, I'm saying to you, the one who created you knows what benefits you.
No, that's begging the question. That's the premise that's under dispute. You can't just assert that that's the case. You need to demonstrate that's the case in such a way that a critic who's saying, I don't believe that claim, would be convinced. And repeating it over and over is not a convincing argument.
And so that should be the standard. So, like, for example, my daughter knows I know what benefits her. So when I tell her to do something, she'll follow that guidance because she trusts in me that I know this thing better than she knows this thing. Okay.
But if she had to ask you, why is it the case, would you give her a reason? Hopefully, as a good, informative father, you would. And you wouldn't just say, hey, it's because I know better than you. She will say, okay, well, how is it that you know better than me? And you will now appeal to something that is outside of yourself. And that's what Tom is asking for God to do, so that he could be satisfied that, in fact, God does know what is good, not just take his word for it.
Okay. So when it comes to a creator that created everything, remember, this is in the worldview of a theistic creator, a creator that created everything for a purpose, designed everything to the smallest detail, and it tells man, this is good for you and this is bad for you. That's what we call objective morality.
No, that's only what you call something that comes from a God that you are taking on faith. Because if Satan was deceiving you and telling you what to do, which is a plausible hypothesis, you guys are following it, and you have no way to distinguish between God and Satan, who is deceiving you and acting as if he's God. And like I say, you would have to come up with a response that does not fall victim to, well, that's exactly what Satan would have you believe. I've tested this, by the way, on theists. And nobody, I'm not saying there isn't an answer, but nobody I've spoken to has come up with an answer, because the moment they give an answer, I can just say to them, well, that's exactly what Satan, acting as God, trying to deceive you, would have you believe, that it is in fact good, and you are being deceived. How do you establish you are not being deceived?
Objective right and wrong. So any human being in the world, no matter which country, no matter which tin pot dictator, their actions get measured against the creator's standard, not their own standard. Do you understand?
Right. That's how consequential.
Sorry, you want to say something?
No, it's just another claim.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Models of morality work, but the reason is we can prove that those kind don't work because of, like, the lion example used earlier. It might be beneficial for me to kill my neighbor and take his money or whatever, but that doesn't make it good. It's not good just because it benefits me. It's still morally wrong. So the fact that something that benefits me doesn't make it moral. And so just because it's good for you doesn't mean it's moral to do it. There can be things that are good for you.
I didn't say that, did I? I said the standard of morality, what's right and wrong.
Right.
What's right and wrong, when you follow what's right, you benefit.
How do you know what's right? Because your God said so. We get back to the euthyphro dilemma. Thomas asking for a reason why he should accept what God says is good. And all you keep repeating is that it's good because God said so. You really do not understand the euthyphro dilemma, and your repeating yourself demonstrates this over and over again. And it's a shame that Imram, if he did know anything about this, should have stepped in at this point.
Right. So the benefit thing is the problem that may not be correct. So just because you benefit,
you just asserting it's correct is not an argument.
You benefit. Just because you benefit doesn't mean it's good. You can benefit from bad things too.
Because one who created you said it's good.
That's why it's arbitrary. That's the euthyphro dilemma. That doesn't work. That's why most philosophers reject that.
I don't even understand what that even means.
Okay, but then why are you arguing things that you really don't understand? And it's demonstrable over the last 10 minutes that you have no clue what the euthyphro dilemma is, or in fact how to address it. I mean, there are rebuttals to it. I don't think they're actually particularly substantive. Even William Lane Craig, who's held up as one of the top Christian apologists, his response to this, I think, just kicks the question back one step, and the question can still be asked, and you're in the same position.
Your creator tells you something's good, and you're saying that doesn't work. I don't get it.
Okay, the fact that you don't get it, I think just listen now. I mean, Thomas explained it to you, what the euthyphro dilemma is. And okay, I understand it's the first time you've heard it, but then stop and listen rather than trying to challenge something that you don't understand. That doesn't reflect well on you.
It's why is it good? Just because the God said so?
Let's imagine this, your wildest imagination that you atheists always crave. God appears to you. And empirically observable, test it. I am God. I'm going to do things that only God can do. You agree I'm God? Thank you. Right. Don't drink alcohol. It's bad for you. Are you going to go and drink alcohol?
I would ask why. I wouldn't just agree to it.
Beautiful answer. I will ask why. Yes, you will ask why. Just because you're God, just because you're all-powerful, does not necessarily mean that what you're saying is objectively good. That is the whole point of the euthyphro dilemma. And you need to provide a response to this. And watch what happens now.
one way or the other, because the fact that he said so doesn't make it true or false. That's the
So
point.
your creator now has told you, as a command, don't drink alcohol.
Right.
You still drink alcohol.
Yeah, I wouldn't act one way or the other,
You
because
wouldn't listen to God.
commands don't mean anything. You'd have to give a reason, an argument behind the command. I wouldn't just obey
What,
it. For no
what
reason.
if you can't comprehend the reason?
Wow.
Well,
what a
then it's the
statement.
then
What
it's
if
the
you
God
can't
that failed. That it's an incompetent
Exactly.
creator God.
Wow. then it's, if God is all powerful, he can get you to understand. What a terrible response to that. You're undermining your own position and your own God. You're basically saying, well, God has created you so badly that you can't understand, and you actually want to understand. We're not talking about somebody who's trying to willfully not understand. Wow, what a response. I mean, that's just incredible.
Then he should try, and if he can't, then I'm not going to understand it, so I won't listen to it.
Do you need to understand it, or do you just follow the guidance of the God?
No, I need.
There you go. He just follows the guidance of his God, but that is in fact demonstrates the euthyphro dilemma is a massive problem. He just follows. In other words, he's following what Tom would say, and I would agree, is arbitrary commands. You have no way to establish that what the Creator has said is objectively good, and you are following it based on faith. Okay, that's not going to work for the rest of us who are thinking critically about this. But you have a worldview that says, that has taught you that you must follow what is being said, essentially in this case, without question. And in fact, you haven't questioned it, and that's why you don't have a response to the euthyphro dilemma.
To understand it. I would need to understand it to actually listen to follow it.
So if you don't have the capacity to understand, then you wouldn't obey God, even
Correct.
if He existed.
But
Want to say
this
something,
is the
Charles?
whole point. This is the whole point. You have to abandon reason. You substitute reason for obedience. And that's all.
Yeah, I think that's what Hamza is demonstrating here in this particular case. Now, I won't say that about all Muslims. Presumably there are a few, and the guy Yusuf Ponders, which I try to get hold of on Twitter, he does understand this. His objection is kind of similar to William Lane Craig's, I think, or a version of, and that doesn't work necessarily, and I invited him to have a conversation with me about that.
Oh, that would be
and the
nice.
rest of
Yeah,
it.
that's excellent.
Because
Thank
actually,
you.
the other thing that I thought was, after that stream, right, he actually on occasions tried to steelman my argument after I had left. Of course, they had said, okay, you need to leave now. And of course, they talk after you've left about whatever they believe. And he actually came up a couple of times because I listened to the end. I was like, wow, I've not seen a Muslim try and steelman my position. He can still say that it's wrong, but he's saying, hey, here's what Rob was trying to say, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I was like, wow, that for me, because I just don't see that by Muslims ever. That was the first time I've ever seen that. I was like, wow, I'm impressed with that.
Wow.
I-
Yeah, I was blocked, so
can't-
I left.
Oh, okay.
Understand something, I wouldn't follow it at all. So I would
Really?
always, yep.
Yeah, I think he needed to be more clear here, because he's now going to go off a little bit into the long grass here. What he could have said, again, a small thing for Tom here, and it's easy in the to look at it afterwards. It's the first time I'm remembering saying this, but what he could have said is, I won't accept something I don't understand from a creator necessarily, because now you'll see he goes off a little bit on a tangent. They try and ask him questions, and he answers them, but I think it veered off to a point where Imran says he doesn't believe him, type of thing eventually.
So if you can't understand to do something in your life, you won't do that thing.
Yes, if it
If
was
you don't understand how
incoherent.
medicine works, you won't use that medicine.
Yeah, I don't trust medicines. I don't work like alternative medicines. I don't use them. I wait for
Okay.
the.
Do you know how
scientific
cars
paper.
work?
Yes.
Do you know
I
how
can build
planes fly?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, like the
How do
engines,
planes fly?
turbocharged engines. What they do is they have multiple layers of fans that all compress the air and shoot it at faster speeds. It generates heat, and then the heat propels the engine and makes it fly.
Right, so you don't do anything unless you know how it works.
I don't trust anything unless I know how it works.
So when you're using your mobile phone, you know how the mechanics of the mobile phone works.
Yep, quantum mechanics. They use
Right. So what?
they use certain kinds of shapes in order to generate quantum mechanical frequencies that can then transmit the signal.
Quantum mechanics is how mobile phones work.
Look at Hamza's, like he can't believe, because oftentimes Hamza will get to a point where he keep asking questions, the person will eventually say, well, no, I don't know how to do that, and then he'll have a big smile on his face. Here Thomas is responding, whether it's entirely accurate or not is another position, but Tom is responding to every single question. Yes, I know how this goes, and he's like baffled that, because normally by this stage somebody would have conceded, no, they don't know how something works or whatever.
Yes, it is. Did you not know that? It's
Really?
cool.
So you're saying that so someone in life who maybe not as educated as you, are you self-educated?
Okay, so now he goes off on a tangent, right? Now he's tried to ask Tom, he's got it to a stone wall, so now he's going to go off and talk about other people. He's going to shift the goalpost to, well, what happens about other people, and he's going to go into Tom's education as if that's somehow relevant.
Can I ask?
On a lot of things, yeah, I didn't go to school for everything.
Right, so you just picked this up from where?
Research it, test it, build stuff.
Okay, so let's say there's somebody who doesn't have your capacity of knowledge of learning and such. What do they do in this scenario?
Test stuff. So you can say, if I have
They
a
have,
hypothesis.
they have to learn how a plane flies and how a car drives and how a mobile
It's not
phone
the
works.
point. It's
Oh, no, you don't
critical
have to-
thinking. It's not the point what you are doing, what your education is, what your job is. This is not the point. As soon as you have critical thinking capabilities, you are going to do the same thing. End of story.
You don't have to go that deep. You can do a simple test. You say, if a car works, then the car will be able to get person A from point A to point B. And say
Right.
person A did go from point A to point B, then that's evidence the car works.
Right. So every law that is put on you by your government, yeah, you have to know why. Everything, dot the I's, cross the T's and that. I'm just trying to understand that.
No, you're not trying to understand. That's not true. I don't think you're being honest there. You're not trying to understand. You're trying to catch him out on something. Go, there. See, you. That's not true. I've caught you out. That's what you're really trying to do there.
Exactly.
How do I know that? Because I've had conversations with him. I've seen many conversations there. He's trying to catch people out.
The
I'm not
gotcha.
trying to understand. Because
Yeah.
if you tried to understand, you would have been much more quiet when the euthyphro dilemma came up that you didn't understand. Instead, you jumped in with both feet and you sunk yourself.
Yeah, the why.
Here's how I see it, Tom. Let me tell you how I see it.
You're trying to understand, but I'll come back immediately and I'll interrupt you incessantly, but I'm actually trying to understand. I think you've shown us you have no intention of trying to understand.
If the one who created everything exists, tells me this is good and this is bad, I'm following that guidance, man.
Well, that's fine. You can have faith in that. You have no way to demonstrate whether what that creator is telling you is in fact objectively good, and that is Tom's objection, and you still have no clue what he's actually saying or how to respond to it.
I can't blame you.
I'm not so arrogant that I can think I can try and rationalize the mind of God.
That's not what you're asked. That's not what you're being asked to do. You're being asked to rationalize some argument as to why what God says is good.
Yeah, unlike yourself, unfortunately. Yeah, if this is God we're talking about here, the creator of everything, your evolution is out the window at this point. You know that, don't you? Yeah, yeah. If this theistic God exists, don't forget everything comes now. Paradigm shift here now. Yeah, there's a hellfire.
Remember, God and evolution can both exist at the same time, right?
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about theistic God.
Oh, now suddenly you're actually saying that the theistic God is incompatible with evolution. Why didn't you say that in the very beginning?
That has told you that there's a hellfire, there's a paradise, there's when you die, it's not the end, and all of these things, and has told you then follow these rules, these laws, or these consequences. Would you follow the laws?
No, you'd have to explain them to me. I wouldn't just blindly follow anybody just because they had
I'll ask you a question.
Great answer. Yes, of course you're not going to blindly follow it. You are, because you think that your God is all good and every command that he gives you is good, but you have no way to demonstrate it. And Tom is pointing out that is just blind faith.
Tom.
Sure.
Is there,
Now what we'll see is Imram try to come in, at least here, but Imram will actually kind of refute Hamza, maybe even himself, if I remember correctly. Let's see.
is there anything that you don't understand?
Sure, lots of stuff.
Or would not have the capacity to understand?
Probably.
Okay. And if do you understand the concept that the theists have about the creator is that his knowledge is unmeasurable?
Yeah, omnipotence or omniscience.
So it knows all things. His knowledge is unmeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
Unmeasurable? No, his knowledge he just has all knowledge. That's all it is. It's not unmeasurable. Certainly not by his own standard. Maybe by yours, but not by his.
So definitionally, there are going to be things that the creator would know that you're not going to even be able to comprehend.
Sure.
Is that a reasonable thing to say?
Absolutely.
So in what capacity so this is sort of we're talking about epistemic humbleness, knowing the limits of your ability to know things. Yeah. So this is intrinsically part of the theistic mindset when there are things that we will be able to explain. So the alcohol is a clear thing. So you just look at any society where alcohol is widely
obviously you're speaking to somebody in chat there. Make sure that you say that it's you that they're blocking. I don't think they've blocked me, or at least not so far anyway.
Taken. And just look at a Friday night and go to your local hospital, and it will be full of people who are either injured themselves because they were involved in alcohol use, or have injured others because alcohol was being used, or have had some sort of trauma because they crashed a vehicle, etc. And we see the detriment to the society within that because of this specific use. So even starting from Thursdays now, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, A&E will be full of people who are damaging themselves because of alcohol.
Notice what he just did there. Okay, so he has appealed to evidence outside of what God says. God says it's wrong to have alcohol, and what Imran is doing is going, I believe that because I observe all these people and it's, quote, bad for them, which means that you're appealing to something outside of God. Hamza, on the other hand, at least so far, is saying whatever the Creator tells me is good or bad, I will follow. Imran is taking at least a different view, or at least an additional point, and going, no, I'm looking out there, and that's what convinces me, not just the Creator itself saying it's wrong. And that's Tom's point.
I think Imran is taking the observation as a confirmation.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Correct. He's taking it, but he's bringing in something additional there. He's not just saying, or at least it appears that he's not just saying, I'm taking it on faith. Hamza is saying, whatever God tells me, I'm going to do. I'm not going to look out to the world to verify whether it's true. And so it's almost like in Imran's case, he's doing the other horn of the euthyphro dilemma. Is it good because God says so, or is it good because there's some other standard? He's appealing to another standard, and that other standard is evidence of this badness. Now,
exactly, because people who go against the wishes of or commands of this God, look how they are suffering.
Correct. So he's appealing to something outside of God. So he's actually taking the other horn in this case. Now, if you point this out, he'll quickly probably somehow try to backtrack and go, no, I'm accepting what God says. Well, then you don't need to look out in the world. You automatically know that whatever God says is good and whatever God says is bad. That would be your case. But if you're looking out in the world and confirming, or potentially, well, you guys wouldn't disconfirm, but confirming anything that is good or bad, well, then now you're appealing to something outside of God, and that's the other horn.
Yeah.
So objective.
By the way, I want to tell people I'm having a beer tonight, and I'm not going to go to A&E or anything. It's just that this is the argument that I'm also making. Of course, I also do that. If I want to make a point, I exaggerate. So, then you bring up extremes, and this is what he's doing. So, of course, there are millions of people who, I have a glass of champagne for New Year's, or like now I have I didn't touch any alcohol for half a year or something. I have no problem with that. But then this does not fit into the pattern, because they want to have somebody who touches alcohol is immediately an alcoholic with, liver problems and whatever. So
yeah, when I looked into this, right, because there was this claim about alcohol, and of course I've seen articles that say no, one glass of wine a night actually potentially can help lessen heart disease, for example.
Yeah, the free radicals.
Then I looked into it a little bit more.
Has more than red wine.
Yeah, and then I looked into it a bit more, and it wasn't conclusive either way. But what it didn't say is that alcohol across the board is bad under any circumstances and any amount. That it didn't say.
The body produces alcohol.
Now, you said that, and they were like they couldn't believe what you were saying, right? So when you come to your point,
there's a huge cloud out in space which consists only of alcohol. So if God hates it so much, why does he create an entire cloud?
Well, I guess they would come back and say, you just mustn't consume it, right? But why not? If it turns out that, in fact, a small amount of alcohol is good for you, what we mean by good is that it avoids some negative detriment.
And that's what the Quran says. That's exactly what the Quran says.
And if it does do that, right, then that would falsify your claim, presumably. Yeah. But of course, you'd have to shift the goalposts. Yeah, they're going to shift the goalposts, right? They're not going to accept.
No, they say it's a sequence. It's a chronological sequence. The Quran doesn't say anywhere it's a chronological sequence. They just make it look as though it is. They just make the claim. It's not. It's just two different sentences. One says there's good in it, and the other one says it's bad. Now, which one do you take? So it's your pick.
Yeah, well, they've all picked bad, right? But if it were the case that we could observe that, in fact, a glass of alcohol in the evening, or whatever the case may be, whatever the claims were, if it were, we could demonstrate that was the case, then presumably that would show that it's good. But, if you're going to go with the standard that Imran is using, right?
No, sorry, I mean this one.
Oh, right. That certainly does for you. I don't drink anymore. I did a little while, many years ago for a while. But all right, let's carry on. I mean, I don't think we're going to get through it. Stops. We're probably going to have to do a part 3 at some point because we're not going to get through this at all.
I'm talking too much. Okay.
It's not you. It's probably I'm talking more than you, actually.
Alcohol is bad for society. We know that societies in the past have tried to.
No, you can't say
we
that.
had a prohibition in the 20s in America, for example, that didn't really work.
Had the opposite effect, yeah.
Had the opposite effect. People were going underground and drinking even more. So the idea that this is not a.
By the way, I'm sure that there's some of those people were theists as well. But then you have to say, well, then you have to go with his argument, right? That there's something wrong with the brain, but that would counter his argument of objective morality potentially.
Okay.
And there's Muslims who drink as well. Go on.
Can I just tell you with a 60-second story? We got a consignment from Europe, which consisted of cigarettes, alcohol, ravioli, Nutella, and things like that. Things that you couldn't get. So a couple of cases which they deposited on the pavement in front of the house were like touching the neighbor's property, sort of area, entrance to his garage. So our gardener came and said, I watched the neighbor come and pinch a whole case of whiskey. So when my father came home, he went across to the neighbor and said, listen, you're a Muslim. You pinched a whole case of whiskey. Can I please have it back? He says, oh, is this yours? My father said, yeah, because we got all these other things. So he says, and you're not allowed to drink anyway. Yeah, but he says, this is different. Number one, I closed all the curtains and then Allah can't see me. And number two, it was sticking out over my border. So I thought Allah was sending me a case of whiskey, so it was okay.
Yeah. They would just say he's a bad Muslim, right?
And the other story is this was hilarious. It was stopped, but this happened in the beginning because remember that they built all these islands outside of Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Doha.
Yes, yeah.
So what they did is they said that alcohol can be served out in the open in any restaurant, which normally is not allowed. But here it's allowed because the laws of Allah don't work here because this is a man-made island. It's not Allah's island.
Yeah, they can rationalize anything if
anything you
if
want
there's money
anyway.
or if there's some advantage they can take from it, right? As long as Muslims don't do it, apparently. Yeah.
Unknown thing. And we have a similar thing with sort of smoking. The link with cancer is almost
undeniable.
How do we know that, Imran? Because we have evidence separate from your God's claim. Thank you for taking the other horn, which is, hey, I'm going to appeal to additional information outside of God to confirm that what he says, or at least in this particular case, is right or wrong. Now, again, I don't know if he says anything about it's poisons, right? Stops, but then you have to demonstrate something's a poison. Right? Yeah.
People who are still drinking alcohol, who are still smoking, and effects are happening. So knowledge itself doesn't lead to adherence or changing your behavior in any way whatsoever.
Right.
So
knowledge doesn't change your behavior. Okay, that's not a great thing because you're saying that the all-knowing has sent down commands. And some people, it's not changing their behavior. But your critique against Tom was that, hey, if some people don't follow the moral law, then how can it be objective? We can levy the same your objection, which I don't think is a good one, against you, and that would have to show that your God's commands aren't objective because people aren't following it.
There are things that you're not going to. There are things that you will not be able to understand that may be good for you. Or they may be, or you're not going to understand that may be bad for you. That a being in a position to tell you these things is going to be able to say, okay.
How do we know that the being is actually being truthful, and is and we know that what he's saying does in fact correspond with reality in some way?
Because we've agreed that this being is God. So I'm not saying I'm making you into a theist here, but I'm saying that we've agreed as a foundation for our understanding that this being is all-knowing. And so his advice to us or information given to us from that being is going to be, if we're talking about morality, the standard.
That doesn't follow. That
And what?
is a non sequitur. It does not follow that because he knows all things, therefore he's automatically the objectively good standard. He could be the objectively bad standard, and you would have no way to differentiate between them. He tells you that alcohol is wrong, let's say by your interpretation, and you visit that. Somehow he didn't tell you that slavery is wrong, did he? Or other unfortunate things. So what's more likely, that this is an all-good God and forgot to tell you these things, or in fact that this is some sort of satanic, in your model of the world, some satanic entity that is pretending to be God, is in fact stops an eye and Tom and everybody else that's asking for reasons, and the Quran is there as a test of your credulity. And if you have incredulity, as you appear to do, then you fail the test. And if there is a test, then the rest of us who have critical thinking and credulity for this are going to pass the test. How do you demonstrate that that's not the case?
Can't.
I'll wait.
Can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so then we would apply that standard in our lives. So this is where we get the objectiveness. So there is no societal construct that could happen, for example, that said it would be okay to kill 6 million Jews, for example.
But it was okay
exactly.
to take slaves, or to beat women, or to have misogyny, or rape slaves, if you accept the other.
Remember I created this meme where I said, well, Allah had two choices. He could either prohibit pork or slavery. He chose pork.
Yeah. And again, very simple, right? If slavery is as bad as you guys want to claim because you have some Western upbringing, then one of the first things in the book should be, I get rid of slavery. And one of the responses that Muslims give, which is just comical, it just shows, the level of sort of apologetics. At least, I'm not saying every Muslim does this, but the ones that I've heard. No, Allah didn't want to do that because that would have affected the economy too quickly. It would have been a shock on the economy. And you're like, holy crap. Did you just hear what you said out of him? I'm not saying that Hamza or Imran said it, but I've heard that from Muslims. No, he either couldn't or didn't want to do it because it affected economy. Is the economy more important than owning people as property?
Yes,
So if you're
President
going to make
Trump.
that argument, then clearly you think it is. Right?
Yes, President Trump.
Huh? It's crazy, isn't it?
I could adhere to because my religious, my morality comes from a place beyond this. And so
The fact that it comes from a place beyond this doesn't make it objectively good, and that is Tom's critique, and you haven't answered it. And the fact that you think you have, you're kind of in Hamza's, you've jumped into Hamza's, at least you're halfway up Hamza's same quicksand.
But do you know how many times the Quran mentions obey? 139 times.
Well, that's why Hamza's in line with the Quran, right? If my God tells me something, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's right or wrong outside of it, but Imran is going, hang on, I'm looking outside, but I actually am really taking what God says. You can't have it both ways. So I would definitely challenge him on this. What is it? How do you know something's wrong? Either it's because God told you, or you're looking at information outside. If you tell me, if you provide evidence, then you are backing it up by something else. Otherwise, you've got to take Hamza's view, which is, hey, whatever God tells me, I'm going to do. I'm not even going to look for evidence. At least that'd be consistent with your book. That would be the other horn of the dilemma. But either way you go, there's a problem, and Thomas highlighted that.
Objectiveness comes from, irrespective of whatever is emerging as a property of morality within my society, I can counter that. Now, what you seem to be doing is, what you're saying is that actually, unless I can think this and understand this, I won't do this. And that's certainly true to a certain extent, but then there's a limit to that understanding and that capacity. So, for example...
Okay, but why is there a limit? In your worldview, who imposes the limit? Your creator. And if he imposes a limit, the question is he unable to not have that limit, or is he unwilling to remove that limit? Either way, that's a problem. Either he's not all powerful or he's not all good, because if he was all powerful, there would be no limit, and if he was all good, he wouldn't limit you he would give you full understanding, so you were very clear on what was right and wrong and why it was the case, and then you would be in a position that you would follow it because you had good reasons. At the moment, you don't have good reasons. You have to appeal outside of God, or you have to take it on faith.
Well, if you're reading a book on, I don't know, let's think of rocket science, you get 99% or 98% of what's being written. You get it all. You work out the equations. Yep, thrust, propulsion, gravity, etc. I get it all. But then there's 2% of it that you don't understand. Are you going to reject that, or are you going to try? Are you going to say, okay, because everything else has been so accurate?
Okay, so this is an analogy again, and it fails because what is the intention of this information? Is the person or the if the analogy is going to be in relation to God, then somebody is giving you this information. Is the person that's giving you this information intending for you to get a full understanding or not? Are they only intending for you to get a part of an understanding? If they're intending for you to get a full understanding, then they should be able to do that. If they can't, then as I said, they're either not all powerful or not all good. And if they can't give you the demonstration, the entire demonstration, then what's the point of the test, especially if they're saying take the rest on faith?
Accurate and true, and I've got a good foundation for accepting this. I'll accept this as well. Or are you going to reject it?
I would reject it until I could test it. So I'd say these two things I can't test. I'll say if they're true, then we'll do this test to see if they're true. And then like if they get it right, then like, okay, that works even if I don't understand it. So if you can test it, I'd accept it, but I wouldn't just accept it on blind faith. No.
Okay. So the question that follows from this position. So you're saying the only things you test and can establish, you accept. Yeah.
No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that, again, because you're confusing with your analogy, he's saying that if God came down and said, hey, I'm giving you all this information, but I'm not going to, or I'm unwilling to give you the understanding of these other things, then would you accept it? And Tom is saying, no, I wouldn't accept that.
Can you tell me
the world? So not like the conceptual things like 1 + 1 = 2. Things in your head you don't need to test. You can just think about.
Of course, we agree. So can you give me an example of any scientific evolutionary experiment that you verified and so therefore accepted?
Okay, he shouldn't have gone down this route. This was a complete red herring now, and now we go off here, and we're going to, I think, end up where Imram now says, I don't believe you. Tom is going to say that he did some stuff in high school, and Imram is going to be incredulous. And I think we'll probably end it stops after this. We'll have to do you and at the ending next time. I think I just don't think I don't know how much time you've got left, but it's getting a bit late here. So let's see how far we get, and then we might have to bring it to a close.
All kinds of them. Like the internal combustion engines. You can verify.
Evolutionary.
Oh, evolutionary. Yeah. You can do petri dish experiments, actually.
No, I'm asking about you specifically because we're talking about you and accepting knowledge that may be beyond you, for example.
Yes. So in high school,
in terms of taking a theory that sort of propounded. So we're talking about evolution within this petri dish. That example you gave us, you said it was proven a fact. Tell me what you have, what experiment you've done for yourself to verify that
here I am.
You've
but
come
it's not
in
only
now,
experiment. It's I don't know why he goes down this road at all. Because I accepted because I tested it, but I didn't test it by going to a petri dish. I went and tested the results, the data of the various experiments. So
yeah, I think the main point here is, and I think you could get anybody there. I don't think this is helpful in the following sense. What they want to get to is that you are accepting something that you haven't tested, and then they're going to go, look, you guys accept something that you haven't tested yourself. We're just doing the same. Look, we're on equal footing.
Stupid.
That's what they want to get to, right? And
I think so.
We can concede the point that we accept things like evolution or cosmology or whatever the case is, and we don't have the expertise ourselves to do it, although we could. If we did have the expertise, we would very likely come to the same conclusion. But that is disanalogous with God, because either you don't understand it or you need a reason for accepting it, especially if God is telling you these sort of things.
Well, then, Rob, let's go, because I'm not going to do much, because I listened to Imran and then they chucked me out. So
let's just finish Tom's bit, and as soon as you come in, then we'll call it. I think it's almost done here, but I'd like to get to the bit where he sort of doesn't believe Tom. So we just do this last little bit quickly.
And so you establish for yourself this is true, and therefore you've accepted it.
Yeah, we do the experiment in high school where we use petri dishes in order to create certain kinds of bacteria to grow and have diverse genetic changes, and then we can see the genetic changes and see how some of them survive better in certain environments and get natural selection. So we have both of those things that we do confirm in high school through those experiments, or I personally did in high school.
So those experiments, you're talking about antibiotics and bacteria, yeah, where you put the ring into the agar dish, and you have a bacterial colonies, and you put the different dots of antibiotics, and you get a ring around them. Yeah.
Yep, I'm pretty sure that's it.
So tell me, where in that did you see the genetic change?
Well, we did the experiments where we take, I forget what it's called, it's like blue gel. We take different samples of the bacteria and we structure their DNA. And we can see the differences in the DNA from the different things.
So in high school, you were doing DNA analysis.
Yep. It's that blue gel stuff where you sequence the DNA by putting it in and it divides it up in a certain amount of ATCs and Gs.
So you were. So I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time accepting what you're saying, Tom. So
how's this relevant? You see, it's gone off in the long grass here, and now it's getting to the point where normally somebody would say, like I would say, well, I'm accepting that because there's evidence in favor of that. I accept the evidence of the overwhelming majority of experts, and why? Because the experts understand the evidence and it points in that direction. And if I did become an expert, I would very likely agree with that as well. So I'm quite happy to accept that. Now, Tom isn't going that route. He's answering all of these questions, but gets to a point of, with Imran or Hamza, for example, they get to a point of incredulity. I just can't believe that you know all these things, right?
Well,
and
it does sound a bit wild for me. And the thing is, what I would be careful with saying that I trust the experts is because they're going to say, well, I'm the expert in God. Why don't you trust me?
Well, and then I'm going to ask them, well, how are you an expert? Demonstrate it. If I went to an expert in any other field, they could demonstrate it to my satisfaction. Do the same for God, and then I'll accept it. Boom. I've got no problem. They won't do it, of course.
So how you don't mind me asking how old you are, Tom?
30.
See what happens now. There's a point of incredulity. Hamza asked him before, was he what is his education? They get to a point where they've answered all of the questions, whether rightly or wrongly. Tom has answered all of the questions, and now it's like, I don't want to accept this. Let me see if I can undermine you or shift the goalposts in some way that I can show that, hey, maybe you're being inconsistent or you're not being honest or something.
Me2.
Okay. Okay. So
that laugh, like I just don't believe you. Why did you even ask the questions then? Because what you want to get him to is the position, my position essentially, and he wasn't prepared to go there. He was saying no. I think you could get him to that position. You guys just didn't know how to do it, but I just don't think that's helpful.
I would posit that you haven't seen, and I know I'm saying that what you're telling me isn't true, and I don't mean to be offensive at all, but
I don't mean to be offensive, but I think you're lying to me. That's not offensive. Not to worry, Tom.
I'm saying that I don't think that you've seen genetic changes. I would say that, and I don't think it's reasonable to say that in high school we would look at what would be given is you're given a theory, and you would carry out a basic experiment to talk about, and what you're seeing actually in the petri dish is something called adaptation. It's not actually evolution into different species or even speciation. You're seeing adaptation. So
this is a big fallacy. They seem to think that evolution always has to result in a different species. That is not the case. That's bullshit.
Okay.
In the existing gene pool that you have there, you see the bacteria adapt to whichever antibiotics that you're putting in them. I don't think that that's genetic changes that you're seing. I think that's
exactly what it is. You fool.
I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not going to comment on that.
You were doing genomic research within high school. I'd be very surprised by that.
Oh yeah, that's just the natural selection kit, the natural selection part.
Exactly.
The genetic sequencing part is the other kits. There are genes and consequences classroom kits that actually do the genetic sequencing that you can buy for high schoolers. So there's two different experiments we do. We do the petri dish one, and then we take the DNA and we...
Sorry, Tom. At this point, we've lost the board. His laptop failed on him, and his phone's got rubbish connection. So what we're willing to do, Tom, we want to continue with you in 2 weeks' time, inshallah. So 2 weeks today.
Please come back.
And we're going to start again with morality and whether atheists can be good. And then we'll do a breakdown of evolution and the different forms of it. Yeah?
Why? What's the point of that?
There's no reason to do so. You asked three very clear questions. End of story.
Yeah. What's the point of breaking it down? I know what the point is, to try and show that atheists are not experts in evolution, therefore they shouldn't believe it. That's the point. I'll try and warn Tom to be careful of that, because all that is to try and trap them to make them look silly.
Right?
Yeah.
Do it.
and then show, hey, they're all sheep, which is that was his premise, right? That you're all sheep, you're all just socially conditioned to it. And now I'm going to demonstrate that, so all my gullible and ignorant followers can clap along like sheep. All we had to do is the same thing with you in the Quran. Show that you follow what you've been told there. You don't know it. You weren't there at the time. We could do exactly the same thing in the Quran, and much worse. But we don't do that.
You have
Awesome.
to do that,
Great.
Tom?
Same time
All
next
right,
Friday?
Yeah, not next Friday, the Friday after. 2
Awesome.
weeks, inshallah.
Thanks, guys.
All
Talk to you later.
right. Just send me a message on Hamza's Den on Facebook, and we'll link up from that point. Yeah.
Hamza, can you send me a link to the Facebook thing?
Hamza's Den, man, same name.
Hamza's Den. All right, I'll check it out.
All right.
All the best, Tom. Nice speaking to you.
Very
Thanks.
nice to
Talk
meet
to you
you.
guys
Take
later.
care, my man. Ta-da.
Okay, and now Stops comes on. It's just so late that my battery is running out on my laptop here. Maybe we do a part 3 if Stops feels like he's kind of repeating everything.
No, because it's
What?
not long, it's not much. And I want to do more of these because
Okay.
you should go there. It's like a whole repository. I'd like to go through more of these, and there's not much here.
So should we go through it now quickly, or
Yeah,
what?
quickly do it.
Okay, all right. I'll only comment once in a while then.
So I just want to, Hamza, just very quickly, just sort
Just
of,
1 second, Captain. 1 second.
just want to very quickly summarize. So there are lots of things that were said there.
Just so you know, Stops, you're probably on for about 20 or 30 minutes. So let's see how we get on. Yep.
And one of the things that was quite interesting is this idea that that morality can be something that can emerge and then still be objective. And obviously, the emergence of any property would be dependent upon these environmental circumstances. So if the environmental circumstances were to be different, then what your emergent property would be different. So this wouldn't be anything objective at all.
That's
But
what he
Obviously, we've
said.
shown that's not the case, right? But anyway, we carry on.
Actually, this was very surprising. The other thing was about empirical verification of everything that you believe. And you mentioned in the example about believing that your mother's your mother. Most people have not carried out genetic testing to check if their parents are their parents. They take this on reasonable evidence, their parents telling them that they are, the fact that they look like their parents, relatives telling them that they are, pictures of when they were young, for example. So this idea that only that what you can empirically verify you believe is very strange, and no one actually in reality does this. And I don't believe that people would be doing genomic testing in high school.
I'm just going to dismiss what Tom says there because, hey, I just don't believe it happens. Nice one.
It's very far-fetched, but fair enough. I suppose whenever Tom comes to the next stream, and we can talk about that in a bit more detail, I suppose.
Well, a couple of things that Tom said that surprised me. Well, not surprised me, but it was good he clarified. Was one that evolution doesn't disprove a creator. So that's
Never mind.
brilliant. That was brilliant. He said that, yeah. But then he went on to the subject of morality flex and the idea that lions shouldn't be eating other animals.
That's what he got. This is a problem with Hamza. I apologize, Stops. Tom went into a long explanation about us. He talked about euthyphro dilemma, and you took away from this that lions shouldn't kill rabbits. It's exactly the same thing when he had a multiple conversation with Skydive Phil. Guess what Hamza takes away? That Skydive Phil on occasion says we don't know. That's the summation of what he got with conversations with Skydive Phil. And what he got from the objective morality is that lions shouldn't eat rabbits. I mean, I'm sorry, it's face palming.
And that the eagles shouldn't be, and in an ideal world, none of them be eating each other. And it was like, what happened? I don't get it.
Clearly you don't get it. At least you admit you don't get it. Then why don't you just say, I have no clue what he was saying, and don't try and summarize it, because you are clearly going to summarize it so poorly as you just did as to make it look, make yourself look pretty foolish, I have to say.
It just went from saying that nature is the objective morality.
Now you're trying to summarize something that you don't understand. I mean, don't you know when to stop? Do you not know when you're in over your head and you just keep drowning?
Yet when nature, something happens in nature, it's morally wrong when it's the objective morality. So surely if nature is the objective morality and something happens within nature, then that's morally good according to the standard of nature because it's happening because of nature. Did I miss it?
Yes,
I got it
entirely
I had
missed
or what?
it.
So, for example, if the eagle lands on the rabbit, and its easiest way to do it is it holds it bound with its talons and then it pulls it with its beak. Otherwise, the rabbit might escape. Yeah, nature's brought that upon according to their worldview. Yeah, but then it's morally wrong. But then if the standard is nature, and nature's doing this, how can it be wrong?
It's inherently contradictory, isn't it, that idea? So
No, it's not inherently contradictory. I mean, it's maybe not the strongest argument, but you guys just don't understand it. And the same critique that you level against that can be leveled against your God.
Like, it's telling nature you're wrong. But then I thought nature was the objective morality. And that,
Tom's view is not that
no.
nature's wrong. Yeah,
This is frustrating.
I know. Stops. I've got about 18% battery left. What might need to happen here, so maybe you just queue it up. What I might do is let you finish it off because my laptop's going to die. So I've got probably another 10 minutes maybe. So if you queue up the video, I'll keep going. And when I get to the point where either my laptop dies or I can't continue for whatever reason, I'm going to let you run the rest of the stream. I'll go to bed and I'll trust you can bring it to a close. So we'll go as far as I can.
Then just do a few minutes because I think it's unfair that we've been taunting people all the time now and we don't get, then just give a few minutes because I don't know how to queue this up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll continue. So if you just go find the video, do you know where the video is or do I need to give you a link for it?
No, but it's
on Hamza's den.
Yeah, but it's your cut.
No, but if you bring it
It's
up
your
and you
edit.
share... Yeah, but I haven't edited out anything of yours. So if you go to the original video...
Oh, no, this is too complicated. No, let's do 5 minutes then and then we do the rest later.
Okay, all right, cool.
this is what I didn't get it. I completely lost it, man. Anyway,
Thinking clearly. Keep going, Stops. We are here to the end. You've got some folks that will stay with you to the last, Stops. It's just a case of you getting the video.
looks like this geezer's got something to say. Let's see. What's Stop
geezer.
Spamming, I think it is, has got to say.
He was pre-warned. Correct. Hi, guys. Thank you very much that you're finally talking to atheists. Wow, that's a big step for you guys. I'm very, very proud of you.
Cheeky
So
stuff.
what have you established so far?
What have we established? Have you been watching the stream?
No, we have a show on a Friday at the same time. Yeah, just for a couple of years now, like a decade, but it's okay.
Oh, are you from this Gin and Tonic show?
Correct.
Oh, okay, with Rob and that, yeah?
Yeah, he joined like 2 years ago or something.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, see, we're not here to establish things. What we've basically done so far...
Yes, you are.
Of course you're here to establish things. You're here to... I mean, the 3 points, right? You're here to establish that evolution doesn't disprove a God, according to you. You're here to establish that the problem of evil is not actually a problem. And you're here to establish your whole thing around beliefs. Yes, you are.
Is to, first of all, do you accept the principle that if evolution is true, that is proof against the existence of a creator? Do you believe that or not?
I am not an evolutionary biologist. Why should I talk about evolution?
And that was my question.
Are you an evolutionary biologist?
No, that was my question to you, though. Do you believe that if...
No. I'm asking, are you an evolutionary biologist?
Explain evolution to me. I'm not, you know what evolution is, obviously.
No, I don't talk about things I don't know of.
Okay. Do you believe that human beings were created?
No, I don't believe human beings were created.
How do you believe human beings came into this world the way we are today?
Well,
Just a quick one, just for interest, Stops. I see this. Are you still butthurt with some Hamza dismantling? When did this happen, Steve? Maybe you can remind me. I'm not aware of it, but I may have a short memory. So you tell me when exactly that happened.
my parents had sex. This is how I was created.
No, I'm talking about human beings. You believe human beings
Human
came on
beings.
as they were, or did they come from something prior?
Okay. Am I so unclear? I just told you I am not an evolutionary biologist. I don't know.
Did you just not want to get into common descent at all? You just didn't want to go down evolution at all?
Correct.
Okay.
I am undecided. I cannot tell you something that I have not decided for myself, can I?
So what do you believe, though? What's the
Nothing where I
alternate-
don't have a good reason to believe it.
And what's the alternate to not being created? How does the human beings get here, then? What's your...
Do you understand that there are three options to an answer? It's either yes, no, or I can't decide. Do you understand
What
that?
you believe. I'm not asking you to be definitive. Just what you believe. What are the options?
Do I need to repeat this? I don't believe.
Do you believe you evolved from a common ancestor?
Yes,
You do believe that.
I believe that. I accept that.
Right, and if you believe that's... Yeah, well, belief, accept is the same word. If you believe that's true, do you believe that then proves the creator doesn't exist?
No, what has it got to do with the creator?
Fantastic, alhamdulillah. So we got through that. That's brilliant. Okay, so you've confirmed that as well. So atheists again, I'll make kafir or stop spamming off the Gin and Tonic show has also admitted that even if evolutionary Darwinian evolutionary evolution is true, it's not evidence against the existence of a creator. So if you want to try and bring an argument against the existence of a creator, leave evolution off the table because it's got nothing to do with it. Thank you, I appreciate that. All right.
But it depends what creator you're talking about.
There you go. I was wondering how long it would take for that to come in there. So, yeah, I mean, good stuff.
But what is a creator? You did not bring the creator into this.
Sorry?
What is the creator?
I believe the creator of everything that exists, the first cause of everything.
Okay, then it disproves it. Yeah.
Oh, it does disprove it.
It disproves this specific creator. Okay, you need to differentiate. You're talking about creators in general, and no, this does not disprove it. If you're talking about a specific creator, like the Islamic creator, that definitely cannot exist.
Okay. Just so you understand, because you come with your little clever kafir moniker, okay, we've not spoken about Islam in this stream. It's got nothing to do with religion, this stream.
No, that's obviously not true. You have a creator. That creator is Allah. Imram talked about, objective morality coming from a creator. And not just any creator. When you guys say creator, you actually mean Allah. You don't mean Vishnu. You don't mean Yahweh. You don't mean a deist God. So please don't be disingenuous and claim that. I know you're you think you're clever that you can bring these arguments without bringing Islam, because then you're going to bring the hammer down with Islam. That's not true. You've got Islam there. It's an underlying premise, and you are artfully calling it a creator when what you really mean is Allah, the creator, supposedly the creator, and the, sort of author by, what's the word when somebody else does it for you? Vicarious author of the Quran. That's what you really mean. Why don't you just say it out loud?
The thing is, we saw last week, we saw in the last part one, that he's constantly talking about religion. He's constantly talking about his God. He's constantly talking about Quran. It's only now it's inconvenient for him. So he says, well, we don't do this here.
If I had the time and the inclination and I did this full time, right, I wish enough people supported me with Patreon, I'd stop doing what I do and do this full time. I'd go back in the video and I'd go and chop it up and find every time that he pointed to, quote, a creator, and we put in brackets Allah. We just put in brackets Allah, because that's what he's talking about. He isn't talking about anything else. By his lights, no other creator exists. So this sort of play on this creator as if there's just some random creator out here is nonsense. There's only one creator by his lights, and that's Allah. So to call it a creator to try and make it more vacuous in a sense isn't being honest in my view.
You can hold back on your Islam, your Quran, and all of these things.
I know you have every right to be a little bit cautious, if not a little bit scared of stops if you were to go down Islam and the Quran. I don't think you'd be the right man to have that discussion, but as we've seen before, you're happy to jump in with both feet even when you don't know what you're talking about.
We're just talking about...
Well, you're talking to an atheist. So an atheist is somebody who does not believe what a theist believes. So you are talking about religion. So I don't know how you can square the circle here.
No. We're not using...
He thinks his no is somehow a definitive claim. Now, of course, all his gullible viewers will be going, yeah, he's not talked about it at all. It's like, it's like Darren Brown, in a sense, hypnotizing people. And they go, yeah, he hasn't talked about religion at all. All you have to do is rewind the stream and you go and ting up every single point where they appeal to their God, or the version of their God that they try to hide behind a creator. And there will be so many times.
The whole title is not, please get some sensible people in. No, it's talking about atheists. So the whole title is already about theism.
Using religion to support the idea of the existence of a creator.
So, thank you. So you don't believe in a creator. That's good.
I'm sorry?
So you don't believe in it. You're not talking about religion, so you're not believing in a creator.
We're using religion to support our belief in a creator.
Okay, so we can leave creators out of it.
Well, no, because obviously the point we're making is that atheists. Let me tell you.
You have caught him out a little bit here, and you can see it now. He's sort of, I apologize, I'm laughing a little bit, but you have caught him out, so he's tripping over his words here in his desperate attempt not to appeal to what he thinks is Islam and his creator.
Even Imran is smiling because he realizes it.
It's obviously maybe not ideal for me to smile, but I am, and I'm only doing it because he's so adamant that he's not talking about Islam or the Quran, when in fact he's maybe not using those words, but he's using synonyms for them.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what you're kind of pointing out. And now he has to sort of backtrack and try and shift the goalposts a bit.
Back to the beginning because you didn't see the beginning. One of your mates saw it anyway, so he might have told you. All right. We said from the very beginning, when we speak to atheists, they bring evolution to the table as if it disproves the existence of a creator.
Not just a creator, your creator, or a particular creator. How many times have we got to do this, right? I've got 8% left, so I've got maybe about 5 minute stops.
So
no,
when
that's false.
Sorry?
That is false. I don't do that.
No, I'm not saying you do. You're
saying atheists do. I am an atheist, so I don't.
Okay, atheists I've spoken to do this.
So there are some people who do that. Okay, so why should I care about them?
What we're doing today is using intellectual atheists like yourself to correct them not to do that.
Look at this. I hope this guy's trolling. He must be trolling. He must be. It's late at night. I know. I can't help it. What are we saying?
So again,
I always tell them not to do that. This evolution thing, to bring this up in a discussion about gods, in my eyes, doesn't make sense. If you are saying that there is a creator who created the first human being and that everything came from one man and one woman, then I'm telling you, okay, that is incorrect. You don't have anything to substantiate that with. This is just your wishful thinking. This is your claim that you are making. You cannot verify or do anything with that. And that's what I'm saying. Leave it off the table.
Just a simple principle. When I've spoken to atheists, and many atheists on Facebook and all of these things, they think evolution is a fact, therefore God doesn't exist. You've now confirmed they're incorrect in doing so, and I thank you, sir. Okay, that was the first point. Appreciate that. Okay, second point we said was that we can't prove the existence of a creator. We accept that, okay? Nor can, obviously, you disprove the existence of a creator. So atheists should stop making the claim a creator doesn't exist. Would you agree with that?
Right, so we agree on something. Alhamdulillah, great.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Perfectly, yeah.
Fantastic. So atheists shouldn't go around telling theists a creator doesn't exist because it's illogical to do so, because you can't prove something doesn't exist. Yeah?
No, that's wrong.
That's wrong.
No. You can't word it. You see, you're wording different things. You need to pay attention to your words that you're using.
What did I say?
If you are saying gods don't exist, then this is correct, because no god in the last 50,000 years that people have tried to provide evidence for gods and have failed, no god has ever been demonstrated to exist. So it's time to let go and accept the fact that there are no gods, and this is why I'm saying there are no gods until somebody has been provided to evidence that they do exist. Until that happens, there are no gods. Wow, my microphone is loud. Oh, is Rob backing up? He can't hear anymore. Oh, shit.
Sorry, no, I'm here. Sorry, I had myself muted for a sec. We're at 1:05:50. We've still got another 30 odd minutes if you wanted to. We can come back and do a part 3. My laptop is going to pack up in 3 minutes. So let's call it there. Unless you wanted to continue, because you've got admin rights, you could if you wanted to. Up to you.
No, that's stupid. I'm sorry, guys, we'll have to do it on the third installment. All right. But I think I have fun with doing this, and it's a lot less work than doing all the research and going and doing and making, because the videos I'm working on at the moment take an incredible amount of time. So I like this, and especially Hamza's Den, because he's now talking specifically about atheists, and he has like 20 videos up, or 15, I don't know how many. So this is excellent. So there's going to be more time. We don't know when this is going to be, because we both, neither one of us really has a fixed schedule when we can do this. We have a life, we have different things that we need to do. We are not full-time or professional atheists. We're just laymen. We're just doing this in free time as a hobby. So we can't promise you when this is going
Imagine
to
if we were those stops. Imagine that we could get an income from this.
Oh,
and do
tomorrow
this
morning,
full-time.
9 o'clock. Let's continue. Yeah.
Yes, imagine, huh? We would be. It would be good. We could wreak some havoc. We do our own little bit of havoc to the best of our ability, but imagine we were quote unquote being paid for this, like some of the Dawa guys, right? But on that note,
But thank you,
Stops,
guys.
thank you so much. As always, thank you to all the viewers. We will come back with a part 3 whenever we have an opportunity. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully
And
there
then,
was something
at the end of
entertaining
part
and
3, we're going
educational.
to ask people to come on, please. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to like insult us, if you want to do things, please come on. So at the end of part 3, then we're going to have like at least 15 minutes where we have time. Okay.
If anybody wants to come on, they're more than welcome. Yeah. So part 3, we hope will be this week. We'll have to just keep an eye out. Make sure you're subscribed. It would very likely be in the evening, the later evening, like we did
Tomorrow
now.
evening, 9 o'clock. Let's
Possibly. I mean, that's always possible. Always possible.
Okay,
I'll have
guys.
to see.
Thanks, Rob. See you tomorrow morning.
Thanks so
Bye.
much. Good night, everybody.